arming themselves with militaries and also war. In these modern times, proxies are often in the news fighting for powers in a now multipolar world. We can see this happening in front of our eyes in real time as what is happening in the current genocide of Gaza. In today's colloquium entitled Coalition of Malaysian NGOs Free Palestine, we will be hearing from speakers who are experienced and well-versed in the United Nations as an international community organization, Zionism, genocide, and international relations from a domestic perspective. I am pleased to share that the upcoming plenary session will have the likes of Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Seri Utama Dr. Rais Yatim, a senior why not we do it again, okay? With a lot of applause, round of applause, okay? To Tan Sri Datuk Seri Utama Dr. Rais Yatim. A senior Malaysian statesman who has held several ministerial positions, in which notably the Foreign Ministry. Thank you, Tan Sri. And then Hans Christoph von Sponeck, former United Nations Assistant Secretary General, who will relate the current geopolitical events with PGPF mission to criminalize war. Thank you, sir. Next, Rabbi Yisroel David Wakes, from Nature Karta, a well-known proponent of Judaism which is not tainted by Zionism. And also, Dr. Maung Zarni, who is deservedly nominated for the Nobel Prize 2024 after years of activism in human rights and works in genocide scholarship. And the next one, Professor Dr. Nazri Ismail. Okay. Boycott, Diverse and Sanction Malaysian Chairman, BDS, a true scholar and passionately leading Malaysia in a global movement which has great impact for the Palestinian cause. I hope we will all benefit from their presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be part of this jointly hosted colloquium with MCM and MyCare. And I must say that our organizing partners are experts in the field of humanitarianism. It is within my expectation that today's gathering will foster better networking between us with the goal of ending the genocide in Gaza first and foremost. It is important that the Malaysian NGOs express a united front by cooperating efficiently to deliver humanitarian aid and ultimately working towards building a new Gaza prioritizing the Palestinian interests. I thank all in attendance for taking time to be here today, NGOs, government representatives, international bodies, private entities, the media, and the public. On this note, I also look forward to the intellectual exercise of invited representatives by establishing a resolution at the end of roundtable session. So we have more than 20 NGOs will be taking part on the afternoon session. As much as humanitarian aid is necessarily to help the Palestinians, it is also important to collectively highlight the failures of bureaucracies hindering distribution of aid and execution of international law. It is also essential to boycott, diverse, and sanction those causing the hindrance. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not take more of your time today. Your presence is most welcome and greatly appreciated. I take this opportunity to once again thank you for being here in support of a shared aspiration to energize peace and criminalize war. From river to the sea, Palestinians will be free. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Mizan. We are happy to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, it has come to my attention that there is a change in plan due to the sudden commitments. Yang amat berbahagia, Tun Dr. Mahathir will not be able to deliver the keynote address this morning. We sincerely apologize for the unavoidable change in program. In light with this unfortunate development, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Nur Mai, Chairman of PGPF, will deliver a note from Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. Tan Sri, dipersilakan, sir.
Assalamualaikum, selamat pagi. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri, Puan Sri, Datuk-Datuk, Datin, tuan-tuan, partisipan yang hadir pada pagi ini. This morning I received a note, especially from Tun Mahathir, who is now resting in the end. A simple and short note which I am going to read for all of us to appreciate his interest in this colloquium. This is his note. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, please accept my deepest apologies for not being able to be here today with you. I was indeed looking forward to be reacquainted with old friends and at the same time meet my new ones, people who share similar concern, aspiration, dreams and hope. I was indeed looking forward to be alas, such as is the fate of mankind, we propose, God dispose. Nevertheless, and despite my physical absence, we are all here together for a common purpose, in a unity of purpose. We are all fully aware of what is happening in Palestine and the genocide being committed by the Israelis, the Zionists. We have come to terms that Israel has turned into a monster with no regard for human values. It is openly committing genocide of Palestinians. What we hope to achieve here is first to reaffirm our commitment to the Palestinian cause, strategize on how we can up the ante with is too wrong. The first is to demand and pressure the international community to be responsible toward the ongoing genocide and to put a stop to it. Secondly, is to demand and pressure our own government to condemn and denounce the genocide domestically, to subject boycott, divestment and sanction against Israel and cooperation and entities supporting it. We must hold Israel accountable for their evil and barbarity and be punished for it. Israel does not respect international opinions of law. The international community must act, send an international peacekeeping force to Gaza to protect the Palestinians and stop the genocide in the name of humanity, the sanctity of the human life. I appeal to the sensitivity of the world to please stop the massacre. I apologize again for not being able to be present today. I wish everyone good fortunes and may God bless us all in our effort. It is my fervent hope that at the end of this colloquium, we will be able to figure out what needs to be done to achieve all this. From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and warm regards. Sekian.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Nur Rahmai, for conveying the note from Yang Amat Berbahagia to Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. We pray for easement from burdens for all, inshallah. Amin. Ladies and gentlemen, will the plenary session speakers, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Utama Dr. Rais Yatim, Dr. Hans Christoph von Sponeck, Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss, Dr. Maru Zarni, and Professor Dr. Muhammad Nazari, please take the stage, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, the colloquium will be the first concerted effort by Malaysians to produce a document in which a united stand of solidarity with the Palestinians is expressed. When we first talked about the colloquium, it implied a simple and informal setting. Little that we know, it has now become a mega-sized colloquium. It is made possible because of your attendance here to show your support for a free Palestine. Birrah bidam naftika ya Palestine. Takbir! 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 Alhamdulillah. Ladies and gentlemen, in extending our hospitality, there is running coffee and tea outside the auditorium. We are trying to get this colloquium trending. We implore all attendees to please tag all your social media uploads with the hashtags as shown on the screen. Number 1, hashtag Malaysian NGO for Palestine. Number 2, hashtag Palestine Resolution Coalition. And number 3, hashtag Gaza Kita. Ladies and gentlemen, We will now begin with the plenary session where each speaker is given 20 minutes. We have quite an impressive lineup of speakers today from varied backgrounds. Our first speaker in this session is Dr. Hans Christoph von Sponeck, former UN Assistant Secretary General and UN Humanitarian Coordinator for Iraq. And Dr. Sponeck is also PGPF International Advisor. Dr. Sponeck, you may proceed with your topic, Criminalized War in the Current Context.
Good morning. I want to start by saying I'm very grateful to the coalition of Malaysian NGOs and of course to Tun Dr. Mahathir that I can be here. I've traveled many miles to add my voice to yours, to your voice of outrage about the Israeli war against Palestinians. World War II was part of my young life. My father was executed. My grandfather died in prison. My half-brother lost his life in battle. My mother was imprisoned. I was hiding with my grandmother. As an adult, I again experienced war, this time in Iraq. And now there is Gaza. Since 7 October, we have seen the most atrocious, the most brutal destruction of life and livelihood of innocent people in modern history. In early July, the United Nations tells us that an estimated 38,000 Palestinians have died. The real figure is most likely much higher. The future that lies ahead for Palestinians, has to do with 23 million tons of rubble containing what used to be their homes, their schools, their hospitals, their playgrounds, and so on. I ask myself, are there any Palestinians left who have not been traumatized by an occupying government that has no conscience and has no morality? As a senior official told the press just recently, on the 24th of June, I quote, "Without decisive intervention to resume education, we will condemn an entire generation in Palestine to poverty and sow the seeds of hatred, resentment, and future conflict." Do political leaders, I ask, around the world really understand the implications of what this means for Palestinians, for people in the wider Middle East, and really for all of us? I shudder. I really shudder when I think about it. How dare the Israeli government consider their slaughtering of many thousands of innocent Palestinian people a response of equivalence, a response of equivalence between Hamas and Israel. How dare the Israeli government accuse those who support boycott, disinvestment and sanctions, the acronym is BDS, in response to illegal West Bank settlement policies, land grabbing and settler attacks, we see them every day, on Palestinians, as evidence of anti-Semitism. How dare the Israeli government label anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. The two are totally different issues. It's a shameful, no more than a shameful nonsense. How detestable and how abhorrent is it that the Israeli Minister of Defense, Gallant, is on record to have said that the Israeli government will carry out a siege, quote, that will prevent the entry of water, of fuel, of food, of other necessities into Gaza. Can you imagine this? A cabinet member of a government is making such a statement of cruelty. The Israeli government should note with very great concern, I really think with very great concern, that what the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the UN Security Council on 24 October 2023, when he said, and I quote, it's an incredible quote, "It is important to recognize that the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation." That was a bold and a very powerful, moving answer to repeated accusations by Israeli politicians that the UN, quote, focuses solely on the humanitarian situation and what led up to this moment, end of quote. While the Israeli authorities identified 7 October as the moment, the UN Secretary General reminded Netanyahu and his government that the moment was not 7 October, but the moment was 11 June 1967, the end of the six-day Arab-Israeli war, when a ceasefire agreement was signed and when Israel occupied, seized, stole, if you want, Syrian Golan Heights, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, and the Egyptian-occupied Gaza Strip. On occasions like this, I often, and with great respect, quote what Albert Einstein, the renowned physicist, we all have heard his name, but not just a physicist, he was also an activist, a peace activist, for whom war, just like for Tun, was a disease, who wrote in 1929, over 100 years ago, in 1929, he said to Chaim Weizmann, Israel's first president, quote, should the Jews not learn to live in peace with the Arabs, then we have learned nothing during 2,000 years of suffering and deserve all that comes our way. That's an incredible statement that I wonder whether Mr. Netanyahu has the courage to accept and to reread this statement. Do we, you and I, we all, do we members of civil society really need to see more of the killing that we saw on the screen here a moment ago, and the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank. Must we really continue on our TV screens to every day see these kind of pictures, or read more about Gaza's human catastrophe in order to speak out? My answer is clearly no. We don't need to see more. We have seen enough. What is needed, what we need to do, is to take actions, not just words. I stand in front of you and I throw words at you. That's not enough. In any case, maybe you have, I do not have, the ability to express my feelings that really show what I believe is this catastrophe in Gaza. It is tragic. It is truly tragic that the political UN, when I talk, often people ask about the UN. My reaction is, what UN are you talking about? There's a political UN, that's the Security Council and the General Assembly, and then there is the Operational UN. In Malaysia, you know very well the Operational UN, UNICEF, WHO, UNDP. These are operational bodies, totally different from the political UN, the Security Council, and the General Assembly. And it is tragic, I started to say, that the political UN is so deeply divided by geopolitical polarity and therefore incapable to carry out its peace and security mandate. While on the other hand, the General Assembly, the main body of the United Nations, with very clear majorities, are calling for an end to the Gaza catastrophe, has no power of enforcement. Whatever the obstacles, and there are many, the public voice has to speak out and do so forcefully and with a full conviction that as responsible citizens, we have no other choice but to assure Palestinians that we stand next to them with our unequivocal support for what? For their dignity and for their mental and physical survival. Public silence cannot possibly be an answer for the Gaza catastrophe. It is not accidental that today's Gaza meeting is taking place in Kuala Lumpur. At least for me, it's not accidental. Why? Because it is here that decades ago, Dr. Tun Mahathir declared with unshakable insistence that war was a crime and should be outlawed. I have the red book which he gave to me still with me. It's in the car. I'm sorry, I forgot it. I wanted to show it to you. This red book in which it is clearly defined what Perdana and Malaysia think about war and what needs to be done about it. But for that reason, Dr. Mahathir established the War Crimes Commission in 2007, as you know, to investigate the alleged war crimes committed in Iraq. I'm trying to make a link to Gaza and elsewhere. The tribunal that was set up found, after 2 years of deliberation, former heads of state from the US and the UK, George Bush, Tony Blair, guilty of crimes against peace and crimes against humanity for their roles in the 2003 war. Governments and media in the Western world, not surprisingly, chose to ignore the KL verdicts and the work of the KL Tribunal of Conscience. There was also no reaction from Western governments to Dr. Mahathir's demand that, quote, no leader should any longer be able to escape, a key word in international relations today, should escape accountability. At the same time, Professor Richard Falk, an American Princeton University law professor and peace activist, had observed that justice, quote, justice must be administered justly. Justice must be administered justly, without filter of impunity. A reference to the fact that President Saddam Hussein had been executed in Baghdad for crimes committed in Iraq. Yeah, there were crimes committed in Iraq by that president. However, while former President Bush and Prime Minister Blair continued to enjoy impunity in Washington and in London for war crimes and the crime of torture they had committed in the illegal war and occupation of Iraq. This legally important reminder was equally sidelined. KLWCT verdict of 11 November 2011 was submitted to the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor in The Hague in the hope that even though the verdict of a court of conscience, it was not a legal court, it was a court of conscience, was not enforceable. We understood that. It would have received, however, at least a sympathetic hearing. The Office of the ICC Chief Prosecutor, while acknowledging receipt of the case by the KLWCC, issued a note without any case-specific comments stating that it could not accept the submission since, in quote, the case was not in the domain of the ICC's jurisdiction. This was in early 2000s. Today, the non-Western world, especially Africa and Latin America, is no longer, thank God, it is no longer the willing executioner of geopolitical pressures exerted by global powers, and is perfectly able to pursue its own agenda. The debates and the voting in the UN General Assembly on Gaza are convincing evidence of this change, of this pivot. Am I speaking to you? It was in 2024, not in 2000, this year, that a resolution rejected by the US and the UK was passed in the General Assembly with 143 countries, 74% of the General Assembly, including China, France, and Russia, 3 permanent members of the Security Council, agreeing to the admission of Palestine as a full member of the United Nations. Visma Putra's co-sponsorship of this significant resolution, confirming Malaysia's unwavering support and long-standing position to the Palestinian cause, has been noticed, and really is correct, you can check that, noticed and appreciated worldwide. Malaysia is known for that resolution and many other peace-related efforts by various governments of this country. The Arab Middle East, of course, welcomed this outcome. Qatar's foreign minister stated, quote, the admission to the UN of Palestine provides international recognition of a natural, legal, and historic right of the brotherly Palestinian people, end of quote. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Dani Danon, on the other hand, had the chutzpah, had the audacity to react to the resolution by saying, quote, you are telling the child-murdering Hamas rapists that terror pays off. Well, it was also in 2024 and not in 2000 that the International Court of Justice confirmed its authority to act in the contentious case brought by South Africa by ordering Israel to take all measures to prevent genocidal acts. Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki exclaimed, quote, that the ICC court has ruled in favor of humanity and international law. According to the UN news, quote, Israel's military response has to date killed nearly 36,000. That was at one point. And as I said earlier, I want to repeat, the figure of 36 or 38,000 is probably a very underestimation of the actual number of people killed. Bear with me a little bit longer, and then I will come to an end very soon. But I want to say in May 2024, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, unlike when Dr. Mahathir made his submission 20 years earlier, Karim Khan requested the court, a non-UN court by the way, to issue arrest warrants against Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu and his defense minister Gallant, as well as 3 Hamas leaders. Admitting Palestine as a full member state, the ICJ's, the UN court, decision to act in the genocide case submitted by South Africa, the ICC chief prosecutor issuing arrest warrants without question are significant, let's accept that, significant indicators that international law and accountability for all are at last, very late, but they are becoming subjects of increasing public concern in 2024. This is good news. This is certainly good news. But, and there is a big but, the good news, ladies and gentlemen, becomes bad news, no news, unless intentions, good rhetoric, translate into actions and implementation. And in this spirit, the coalition of Malaysian NGOs might consider preparing a statement on the outcome of this conference for international circulation to inform not just Malaysia. You are more important than inward-looking rhetoric suggests, to inform UN member countries of the KL coalition's fullest support for the Gaza-related initiatives of the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. Important, in my view, would also be that the Malaysian coalition link up. It was said already, I was very happy that it was already referred to with like-minded civil society organizations in other countries to form, what we need to do is to form an international alliance for Palestine, and agree with them to jointly convey to the President of the UN General Assembly that such an alliance fully supports General Assembly efforts for a free Palestine, and that the coalition hopes that the September GA summit, there will be, you probably have heard that there is a conference on the 22nd, 23rd of September in New York, in the General Assembly, discussing the future of the United Nations. And that discussion will include the renewed demand of all member states to international law and accountability for war crimes and crimes against humanity, citing the Israeli crimes to underline the urgency of action. This brings in a topic that is neither new nor without controversy, but is relevant. Much human rights law has become available since 1945. There are 2 covenants on such rights, no details here. But I ask you, on the one hand, we have a big body of law on human rights. What about a body of law on human responsibility? Human rights is fine. but there must be linked to something, and in my view, they must be linked to human responsibility. There are no treaties on such responsibility. Attempts were made in 1997 to supplement the two covenants on rights with a covenant on human responsibility. There was that effort made. 47 heads of state and government, including, by the way, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, Jimmy Carter of the US, and Shimon Peres of Israel, signed, can you imagine, they signed a universal declaration of human responsibility that however has remained a draft ever since. Let me repeat, there is no denying the geopolitical dynamics are presently significantly changing the global order. That should be for us, for you, and for us, for other civil society organizations, a sign of hope. Multilateralism is again asserting itself. That's good. And multipolarity is on the rise. I think it's a profound opportunity to use the Israeli crimes in Gaza as an example of the urgency of a debate on human responsibility. You have patience with me, I hope. I'm almost finished. But I want to say the Security Council is exercising its right to draft resolutions aimed at ending Israeli brutality. That's good. But it is failing. It's failing to do justice to its responsibility to implement what has been proposed. Yes, individual members of the Security Council, permanent members included, had the right to disagree, but they had the concurrent responsibility to adhere, a word that you don't hear, at least in Germany, I don't hear much about morality and ethics, but they had the responsibility to adhere to the moral principles of the UN Charter to help in preventing slaughter, as we see on the screens. Had there been a covenant on human responsibility, dissenting members of the Security Council would have had not only the moral, but also the legal responsibility to consider people protecting action. And in the end, I want to say, as Israel has been for decades entirely dependent on the United States for financial and military support, it is for the US government, the only government with the authority to end the Israeli government's atrocity in Gaza. And in that respect, the US should have and could still have continue to end arms deliveries to Israel. Also, the existence of a covenant on human responsibility, not just human rights, would have made it more difficult for the US government to play a double game by supporting increased humanitarian supplies for Gaza and at the same time increase military supplies for the Israeli military to sustain its butchery, its carnage in Gaza, unless, of course, the US was willing to act bilaterally and break multilateral law, as they have done elsewhere in the past. Examples: Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq. Had there been that link that I've been talking about between formal rights and formal responsibility, there can be no doubt in my mind that much death and much destruction in Gaza, as well as the West Bank, could have been avoided. Very end, I want to say, I want to insist, I really, for myself and for my friends, I want to insist that human rights, please, human rights get their value only through application. No human rights on paper mean nothing. When you do something that you have said you want to do and you do it, that means something. Well, I'm sorry if I spoke too long, but I want to say in the end, thank you. Thank you once again, Coalition of Malaysian NGOs, for having given me this opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sponek. Very insightful views. We rarely get unbiased realities on the current subject matter and that of criminalizing war. Thank you, sir. I have a little announcement to make. I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? It has come to our notice that a phone has been found in the toilet area, in the men's toilet area. Yeah? If you or you're someone who you know has lost their phone, please approach the management office or team to reclaim it. Thank you for your attention. Let us continue with the program. Next in our agenda today, we have with us Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss, representing Natural Character, which is an opponent of Zionism who advocates the dismantling of Israel on spiritual grounds. Rabbi Weiss, if you may, do enlighten us on your topic and of Zionism.
With the help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message and so, inshallah, sanctify His name and bring peace to the world. Amen. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to everybody. It's really, I'm humbled. It's a great honor and privilege to be here by such an august gathering. And of course, the first thing is that we are concerned and pray for the immediate return to full health of the esteemed His Excellency Dr. Mahathir, who's somebody who's in the front of standing for the human rights, standing for godliness, standing up for the rights of the downtrodden and for the people of Palestine. I personally had the privilege of meeting well over 10 years ago, and we met at the personal meeting with Dr. Mahathir, and we spoke about the issue of what Judaism is, what's the difference between Judaism and Zionism, and Dr. Mahathir, with his brilliance, understood it fully and has been speaking so eloquently. I was basically overwhelmed. I was in Turkey a few months ago, and a speech was through Zoom was given by Dr. Mahathir, and it was, I think, the most eloquent and clear, lucid description of what the criminality is of the occupation and the difference, the distinct difference between that and Judaism. And so we are always extremely thankful with God's gift to the world of Dr. Mahathir, and we pray the world needs him. We need him for many, many years to come, that he should have a speedy and peaceful recovery. I hope he gets this message. I would love to possibly even visit him, if that would be possible, to convey our message to the Jewish people around the world. This conference that we are here for, that we are gathered for, is for Free Palestine. Very simply, not pulling any punches, simply Free Palestine. But I must say that the word Free Palestine, in and of itself, unfortunately, in the works, we believe it's the works of Satan that has been manipulating the world into silence, sometimes even collusion with the occupation of people of Palestine. Even that word, Free Palestine, is sometimes very confusing. Why? Because there's different approaches what it means Free Palestine. Many people call Free Palestine that there should be a two-state, there should be a division in the Holy Land, that there should be a state of Israel and a state of Palestine. Free Palestine, the Palestinians should have part of the Holy Land that should be under their auspices, under their control. There is another distinct meaning of Free Palestine. And Free Palestine would mean free what was taken in 1948. It's free entirely what was stolen. We as Jews are here to explain that we cannot, because we are Jews, we cannot accept the understanding that it means a two-state. We cannot understand that people should come in the name of our religion, in the name of Judaism, and claim they have a right to simply usurp, to take half the land of Palestine. That doesn't give, it's not acceptable, it's not Judaism, it's contradictory to the core religion of Judaism. It's totally antithetical, it is contradictory, it is illegal, and all the other words that you can find in the thesaurus that would refer to that, that's what it is. Zionism is a transformation from the religion Judaism to nationalism. Judaism is a religion of 3,000 years practiced by Jewish people who accepted this covenant to be subservient to God, accept the laws that the Almighty God gave us 3,000 years ago. It is given by God. God is above the concept of time and space. Therefore, the Torah that He gave us, the laws, is also above the concept of time and space. It is relevant today exactly as it was on Mount Sinai when we accepted the Torah, and it cannot be altered. This ersatz Judaism, this Zionism, this nationalism that has been created and formed by this group that was in Europe in the 1890s and so forth, this group of people who came along and decided they have a form, what they would call Judaism, that is not my Judaism. It's not what we gave our lives for 3,000 years, and we're ready to be burnt alive, tortured, and died for 3,000 years in order to uphold this covenant that we made with God. They cannot take the liberty and do it and play with it like you play with Play-Doh. It's not theirs to play with. It's not their religion. They have no right to touch it, and they have no right to speak in the name of Judaism, in the name of our religion. It is a movement, and let them give themselves a movement, a name that to refer to what they are as a free movement in and of itself. Don't put it on, connect it, to try to conflate this movement of Zionism with a religion of 3,000 years. Therefore, we are here in Malaysia at this critical, momentous gathering from the PGPF and MCM, YCARE, and BDS, and so forth, and so on. I mean, that are here, the gathering together, each and every one of these groups are trying desperately, as the distinguished Dr. Hans spoke, with people are trying to correct this terrible crime that we are watching play before our eyes. Each one in their own right are trying to correct this and doing what they can. So it is really critical that this meeting takes place. And again, I'm humbled that I'm able to speak here. And again, and I really hope that with God's help, I should be able to just shed some light on some issues that will help, that the world should be able to do something, end this carnage, end this works of Satan, the occupation of Palestine. We are here facing a awesome enemy We are facing the powers, again, I keep on repeating, facing the powers of Satan, because human beings have good in them. Every human being was born with good that God gave them. What is being perpetrated in front of our eyes, day in and day out, minute by minute, hour by hour, people spend too much time on their iPhones, on their smartphones. They're spending a lot of time, and they're seeing this minute by minute, and they're watching this, that with over 9 months is the period of a child to be born. So a life should come into this world. It's over 9 months. We're holding by 10 months. We're watching the murder of most probably well over 40,000 people, of the people that are under the rubble. And again, I don't want to use this precious time to speak about every precious, precious human life that is suffering over there. We spoke about somebody lost a cell phone in the bathroom, and that's causing somebody some pain. Imagine what the people in Gaza who are going through hell, heat, cold, lack of medication, lack of toiletry, lack of every basic human dignity. We can't, again, I'm speaking, preaching to the choir, as it is said. I don't want to do that, and really the whole world is the choir. The world is watching this. But it is only the works of a satanic power that can do such a thing. But we have to understand what gives them that power. They are using two very powerful weapons. One weapon is God, the Almighty. They're using the Torah. They are claiming that God gave them the right to be the rulers over the Holy Land. It was given to them de facto. It's theirs. And if anybody is in that property, they're there according to the whim and the will of this group, this controlling group of Zionism and their state. If they don't want them, they don't belong there. The second power that they're using is that anybody who dares to disagree, who stands up in opposition, who complains, who speaks up in opposition, it's the reason of that person speaking up is because there's an ingrained hate to the Jewish people. There is anti-Semitism. They hate the Jews. That is the reason for the people who are complaining, who are opposing their treatment of the Palestinian people. And the Palestinian people are certainly the villains themselves, part and parcel of the Nazis of anti-Semitism. This is the mantra, this is the narrative that is the two weapons of Zionism. Therefore, it is obligatory upon me, as a representative with the help of the Almighty, of the Jewish religion, not the many Jews around the world, the religion itself, and the Jews who are true to the Jewish religion around the world. I'm here, with God's help, to simply broadcast, to clarify, to speak and explain and educate what this is, this Jewish religion, and the ones who are true to the Jewish religion, what is their view to this occupation. It is very simple. When Zionism started, it started in Europe, in Vienna, in Austria. At that time, the rabbis around the world, and we published a book, the Turek Character published a book called The Rabbis Speak Out, a 130-year record of religious Jewish opposition to Zionism. This was the voice, collectively, from the rabbinical authorities around the world to explain the basics. What is Judaism? And what is our view to Zionism? So, with God's help, I will explain just very concisely. Judaism, as I said, is a religion of 3,000 years to be subservient to God. That is what God wanted of us. Part of being subservient is that we have to emulate God. Mahu rachum afatate rachum. Just as God is compassionate, you must be compassionate. We are not to kill, we are not to steal, we are to do kindness, emulating God. We were told by the Almighty, when God took us out of bondage of Europe, from Egypt, that we are to go into the Holy Land. Anybody who would not worship idols can remain there. Worshipping idols, the Almighty did not accept. The Jewish people, some of them, the Arab, did not want to go in, they were reluctant. So we were punished, we were 40 years in the wilderness. We had to wander in the wilderness. And then when we went in, through Joshua the prophet, God made it through a miracle. If anybody reads the books of the prophets, the walls of Jericho sunk. They walked around the walls of Jericho and they sunk. In other words, it was a godly miracle. It was a requirement of God. But God stipulated in the Torah, which is very clear, the Torah today is very accessible in any language. God said to the Jewish people, He stipulated that it is a holy land, and in order for us to live there as a nation, we have to be at a very high level of spirituality. And if we will not remain on that high level, then we will be rejected from the land as a nation. And there's anybody looks at the books of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, all the prophets, that they warn the Jews that they're not on that level. And eventually, the result was, as it says in the Torah many times, complete with these verses, will suck your hearts eschem b'tamachim also. God will, the land will reject you if you will desecrate the land. And that came about with the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago. We were sent into exile 2,000 years ago, not because we were lacking guns, not because America didn't donate to us some phantom fighters. It was because of our sins, and every Jewish person who is true to the religion says in our prayers, the daily prayers, the monthly prayer, on the holidays. In the holidays we say, because of our sins we are in exile. The Almighty sent us out to be dispersed amongst the nations 2,000 years ago, and we were put under 3 oaths of God. As King Solomon, who built the temple, wrote in his prophecies, we are not to return en masse to the Holy Land as a nation. That is a directive by God, an oath. Secondly, we are not to rebel against any nation. Thirdly, we are not to make any attempt to end exile. And for 2,000 years, Jewish people went through much trials and tribulation, much suffering. We went through the Inquisition, the Crusades. It's all there. Anybody can go to Spain, to Portugal, you can see. We went to Italy, you can see where the Jews were banished. In England, there's a town called York. We're living in New York. I am, rather. York is a place where the Jews were supposed to be given protection, and they paid for protection from the city, town. And York, there's a big hill in the middle, and there is a fortress where the Jews, there's a big sign on the bottom of the hill, a big, big sign that says the Jews, I think 400, I don't remember the number, 400 Jews and Jewesses were murdered, they were burned, they were killed, they took their own lives. They slaughtered themselves because they didn't want to be murdered. They were going to be murdered if they didn't convert out of Judaism. And the rest were burned. Simply because they held on to their religion. So we went through suffering. The Inquisition, everybody knows the Inquisition, that people were forced to convert to Christianity, and if not, they were murdered. The Jews suffered tremendously, yet we never attempted and we never went and built our own sovereignty, our own state. And the reason for that is because it is forbidden for us. We believe the Almighty rules the world. We are forbidden to reject God's rule of the world and say, we'll take matters into our own hands and make our own state. God wants us dispersed amongst the nations. There will come a time, this is the basics of Judaism, there will come a time we yearn and we pray for, there will be a time when the Almighty will end this exilic period where all nations will recognize one God. Across from the United Nations, it's called a place called Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. And there's a wall, a conclave wall that says a verse from Isaiah that the wolf and the sheep will rest together. They will beat the swords into plowshares, and there will not be war anymore. That day will come. There will be a metaphysical change where everybody will recognize God. Then that is what we yearn for. We don't yearn to return in order to have a piece of real estate. We yearn to return to be under the wings of the Almighty, so to say. When God will rule the world, there will be a recognition that there's one God. That day will come when all humanity will recognize one God. We will all worship Him together. Not everybody will become Jewish, no. The world will recognize one God, and we will all go up and serve God in harmony. That anybody can become Jewish. It's like, again, I have to say that because people, some have always say to them, are you allowed to? Not allowed to. That's a separate issue. That's not our issue here. But the world will come together and serve God in harmony. It says, all the nations will grab together, will hold themselves together and go up and serve God in harmony. And then, that is what we are looking for. The purpose of our living on this world is to bring glory to the Almighty. The pinnacle of that is when God will reveal His glory, all the world will come up and serve Him in harmony. That is what Jews pray for, what we yearn for. But till that day comes, when God will make this metaphysical change, it is expressly forbidden for the Jewish people to attempt physically to go up with their own hands and create their own sovereignty. That's for 2,000 years we never did this. We suffered, and we never attempted. We had the golden age of Judaism. We never attempted to make a so-called Jewish state. The Zionists, who are the Zionists? The Zionists were people who are non-religious. I carry around the picture of David Ben-Gurion reading the Declaration of Independence in 1948 in Independence Hall. You will look at the days. Now, this is a mostly Muslim country. You look at all the people, the women cover their heads. And you'll go, there's imams, there's sheikhs, there's ayatollahs, there's leaders, religious leaders. If there would become there's a creation of a Muslim state, you would have the leaders of this movement would be the sheikhs, the imams, the ayatollahs. When you would have a Christian state, it would be priests. It would be a pope, it would be so forth. Here they're making a Jewish state, supposedly. They're using the symbols of Judaism, the Star of David. They're calling to the world and saying, this land is ours. We have a deed. The Torah is our deed. It's our land. And you see sitting at the top there, you can't see anybody covering their head. Maybe somebody is covering their head. We have to wear, every Jew is required to cover their head, wear a yarmulke. It's called Yorei Malka, you're fearing God. Every Jew covers their head. It's required. And here, you see that sitting here creating this momentous, this historic occasion, a Jewish state, and you don't even see a religious Jew over there. And yet, they're demanding from the world that they should be recognized as patrons, as leaders, that it's their land, and that anybody who's on that land has no right to be there with ownership. So it is a farce. It is hypocrisy and it is false. The rabbis spoke up and they said, no, you should just know that they are not the representation of Judaism. It's not permitted for us to make this state. And in 1947, a year before the United Nations ratified this state of Israel, the chief rabbi of the community that was living there for hundreds of years, nothing to do with the Israeli rabbinate and the chief rabbi, which is simply a creation of a window dressing, just like they maybe use the Star of David and they use other falsifications of Judaism. They made a rabbinate and a chief rabbi. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the Jewish community that were living there for hundreds and hundreds of years. They, as God-fearing people, had their rabbis. And I have to again explain, we are forbidden to return en masse as a sovereignty, as a large number. But as individuals, God permitted us to be there, and we were living there. In fact, we were thrown out by the Christians at a certain time, and that Solomon, the Great, as I believe pronounced it, was the Muslims took over the leadership, and then they allowed the Jews, they told the Jews come back in, and the Jews were able to build up their community. So for hundreds of years, and they lived together in peace. Jews and Muslims, as they did in every single other Muslim land. Even though we have a distinctly different religion, it was never an impediment to coexistence. We lived together. And so we did in Al-Quds in Jerusalem. And when the Zionists came and they wanted to create the state, in 1947, the chief rabbi of this God-fearing community pleaded with the United Nations. And it's in the United Nations documents. His name was Rabbi Dushinsky. And on July 16, 1947, he said, "We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." This is what the chief rabbi said in the name of the community. He passed on, it's a lifetime position. There was another one that was Rabbi Teitelbaum, who moved to New York and urged his people to leave, that they shouldn't be giving unwittingly support to the occupation, and tens of thousands moved out. Then he passed on, this Rabbi Teitelbaum. Then there was a Rabbi Weiss, not a relative of mine, who came up. This is a picture in 02, the next chief rabbi who came up. You see the tens of thousands, and literally hundreds of thousands in the streets of Jerusalem coming up to take up their chief rabbis. Again, has nothing, this rabbinate, which exists there, it's called Ada Farei, this God-fearing community. They have nothing to do with the Zionist occupation. They do not serve in the army. Maybe you heard what's going on lately. The Israelis are trying to force them to the army. They get attacked. They get ruthlessly attacked. Our rabbis get assassinated. We get arrested. Boys and girls who turn 17 become automatically criminals if they don't register, or they don't. So we have a dual existence. You have the Jewish people who are true to the Torah, whether it is in Al-Quds in Jerusalem, or whether it is in New York, which is the second largest community concentration of religious Jews, or it is in England, or it is in any other country you'll find in Argentina, wherever you find pockets of very religious communities. You will find that the more the religious, the more, invariably, the more anti-Zionist they are, anti the establishment, anti the existence of the state of Israel, because the state of Israel is anathema, is antithetical, it is totally contradictory to my religion, which is to be subservient to God, to uphold the laws of the Torah, and not to take a land from another people, not to steal. That is the difference between Judaism and Zionism. It is an oath of God that we're not to return en masse. We're not allowed to do this. Secondly, this would be forbidden for us to make this, to take control of the land, even if it would have been a desolate land. Let us just say, hypothetically, the land would have been an empty desert, and they would have come along this movement of Zionists and said, we want to create a land, a state. Our rabbis, who are true to the Torah, not only the rabbis, the laymen, the Jews who know the laws of the Torah would have said, excuse me, this is forbidden for us. We don't want to have anything to do with your creation of the Zionist state. We have nothing with it. It's unacceptable. It's not Judaism. You're rebelling against God. But that compounds thousandfold this crime, because when they're doing it, they're creating their state, and they pick Palestine for practical purpose. They wanted to make it in Uganda, in Patagonia. They picked Palestine because they knew that they need massive support to create a country, and that they will be able to get from the Christian, the evangelistic Christians, and the Jews who don't know their religion, by going to Palestine and using emotions and saying, this is what the Torah God gave us. So they decided for practical purposes to go and use Palestine for the homeland. But they had a technical problem. It was inhabited by a people. The majority of people living in Palestine were Muslims. The second largest community were Christians. And in order to have their land, they had to somehow dispose of these people that were in the way of their plan. And so therefore, what they had to do is tell the world that the land, first of all, was without a people, a land without a people, because it was well before smartphones, it was before televisions, and basically. And they were able to sell to the world that it's a land without a people. But people started seeing the Palestinians' problems and turmoil, and there was problems anyway, even without this tremendous media that we have. So what did they do? So they started vilifying the Palestinian people and saying that they hate the Jews. They decided that they used the second tool of theirs, the second weapon, by saying the ones who are opposing us is simply because they are selfish, they don't like the people to come into that land, they hate the Jews, they're anti-Semitic, and they're a continuation of the Nazis. Therefore, you will find they make Yad Vashem, and they make memorials for the Holocaust constantly as a theme, using that to explain why they should be supported and should be sympathetic, because the world was silent by World War II when Jews were suffering, and therefore there's a guilt feeling in the world that they should be, therefore you should be sympathetic to their forming the creation of the State of Israel and support them. So they use anti-Semitism as a weapon, a tremendously powerful weapon, that is abhorrent, that is revolting, that is part of the Nakba. Because the Palestinian people, as in the Arab and Muslim countries, took the Jews in by the Inquisition, until recently the Jews were taken and embraced and given a home that we should flourish, and we put out our greatest rabbis in these lands, including in Palestine under the Ottoman Empire. And that's a fact of history. And we have one of my colleague who's sitting with me here, who's Rabbi Rosenberg. His grandparents left, they didn't want to be under the occupation, but his grandmother was sixth-generation Palestinian. They lived together in the same courtyards and babysat each other's children with a distinct different religion. It wasn't an impediment to coexistence, to love, to be able to live and serve the Almighty in joy. That was a fact. Zionism creates a narrative. Their weapon is this narrative that it's the hate of Jews, that it's inhumane, that people are inhumane, the Palestinian people. And with that excuse, with this, that the world is unfortunately guilty, that 76 years, they kept on hearing this narrative, and nothing was done. Eventually, when you hear it and hear it and hear it, it finally gets embedded in one person, it becomes a fact. They were so successful, it's a satanic thing to do, that they were successful to create that the Palestinian people are not humans anymore. They dehumanized the people of Palestine, that the world could be silent and watch as if you would be exterminating bugs in a field of wheat. That is what we are witnessing, and the world is silent. And we have to turn the soil. We have to wake up the lives, the humanity, in what we call godliness in people, and say, wait, you've been conned, you've been fooled. It's totally the opposite. The Palestinian people and the Muslim communities are the ones who took in the Jews, and we were able to reestablish our lives through these communities, these beautiful people. We dare not be silent. So it is critical, as me, as a Jew, to speak up and to explain and to educate. What I'm saying is not theories. What I am saying is the facts. Anybody could study Judaism, and anybody could see invariably the more the religious the community, the more anti-Zionist they are. People who give their lives for their religion, the more the religious, we pay for private education. We don't have family planning, so we have large families, thank God. We have large families that we have to pay for each individual for their education. It's astronomical, the costs. We have to buy kosher food. We can't just go on this sales for clothing or for food. We pay fortunes for our lives. It's extremely hard what we're doing. Thank God, we're happy for it. But if we would find, if it would be a plus, something critical for Judaism to have a state of Israel, our communities would be the first to support it, the first to speak up for the state. And you find, on the contrary, the more the religious, as in New York, which is the second largest community, a concentration of religious Jews, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, there is not one single Israeli flag in our communities. One single Israeli flag. So you see that something is wrong. You must not be lazy. The people have to do their homework. They have to see and give respect, just like you would respect when you want to do something with a Muslim community. You would be expected that you should discuss it with the imams, with the ayatollahs. When the people are coming and they're going to support blindly the state of Israel because it's a Jewish state, and they're condemning others being anti-Semitic, I think they should at least have the fairness and the respect to speak with the very religious communities and ask us how come we are opposed to it, and how come they are silent when the Jews are being, for 76 years, brutally beaten. Simply, we don't carry guns. Simply, we stand in the streets of Jerusalem and speak up and demonstrate, and we get brutally beaten and murdered, our rabbis, and the world is silent. Why? Where is the world's voice? If this would happen in any other country, they would yell anti-Semitism, and one person would be beaten because he's Jewish. And this is going with impunity. And why the United Nations that was created, as the distinguished Dr. Hans, he said, and he so beautifully said, the United Nations was created, it was created for a powerful good, that they should, because they witnessed millions and millions of people being murdered. And they felt there must be a solution, that we should be able to bring a solution to conflict through peace. So in the 1945 it was or so, they created the United Nations. And one of the first things they did was ratify a state that should be named for a certain religion, the State of Israel, which would mean automatically that the majority of people living there will be second-class citizens. That defies logic. That defies logic. How could they create a state that will be named Israel when you know the majority of Muslims? That means you're looking for trouble. And these are the most brilliant people, scholars, thinkers of the world. So you see, it's the works of Satan. And that works of Satan is carrying on till today, that we are witnessing in Gaza, something that the world doesn't, that the Matir is one of the great people of the world, and anybody who has a heart and soul understands and saying, where is the world? How come they're still silent? The answer is because it's satanic, and the power is because they dehumanize the people of Palestine. We cannot be silent. We are pleading with the world. We are pleading with the world leaders. We don't know what we can do, but we convene here today in Malaysia. We are convening and we're trying. We are attempting to tell the world, please respect logic. It is an insult to basic human logic when you stand silently and you say it's the Palestinians because they're guilty, they're villains. This is an insult to basic what God gave every single human being. And there will come a day when people will turn back 20, 30 years from now, just like nobody can understand how come there was apartheid, where black people were considered second-class citizens, and the United Nations recognized their ambassadors, and he was called His Excellency while they were carrying this on. And the ones who stood up in opposition, Dr. Nelson Mandela, when he stood up, he was for 27 years in prison. And in America, you had niggers and Jews were not allowed, had to sit on the back, niggers had to sit on the back of the bus, excuse me for using that terminology, but that's what they had on the signs. You couldn't drink from the same fountain for water. And there were signs there in the South that said, niggers, Jews, and dogs not allowed. And this went on in a country that says, in God we trust. And I'm not trying to in any way belittle the people, because it's the works of Satan, because they don't realize, the people, humanity doesn't realize what they're falling into. Their common sense is gone. It doesn't make sense. And one day, well, that stopped. And everybody understands racism is evil, is ugly. And nobody can understand. Your child will never be able to comprehend how you were able to accept that. And the ones who stood together with that are looked at in a very bad light. The same thing is with Zionism. It does not have any justification. It has absolutely no justification, the occupation from day one, and the day will come when the leaders of the world will tear the hair from their head, when they will think why God blessed them with the power to do something and they didn't do. We dare not be silent as human beings. We must speak up, and we don't know how it will come about, the relief, but we are required to stand up and speak up and plead with the world leaders to respect the voice of righteousness, the voice of the Jewish people, because they're speaking in the name of Judaism. Hear what the Jewish rabbis are saying, the leaders of the community, and do not be guilty of that you were felt to intimidation because you had to hold your position. God gave you that gifted position of being a president or a prime minister. Do it what's right. Use the gift of God properly. We are therefore with everybody, do not be intimidated. It is not anti-Semitic to speak up against Zionism. It is not, on the contrary, Zionism and the state of Israel is the personification of anti-Semitism. Zionism creates a hate of Jewish people, unfortunately. Not that it's justified, because Judaism is not that. But unfortunately, people confuse the two, because Netanyahu came and declared, not it's a Zionist state of Israel, it's a Jewish state. And if you speak up against Zionism, you are anti-Semitic. And they're making laws and resolutions, and they're punishing professors, and students are losing their tenure professors. And so this is ongoing. It's unbelievable, and it's an insult to basic logic, but we dare not be silent. On the contrary, this is a hurt. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. People died constantly for being Jewish, and now somebody's committing a crime, and if you stand up against them, you call that anti-Semitic, you're watering down the concept of anti-Semitism. It is an evil to the Jewish people. It is an evil and injustice to the Jewish people and to what Allah is suffering of anti-Semitism. So do not be silent. Speak up and do not be intimidated.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Therefore, be careful. Don't call it a Jewish state. Don't say the Jews, because that's exactly what Netanyahu and their evil state wants. Call it Zionism, the state of Israel, and differentiate clearly between Judaism and the state, and pass our message on to the people of Gaza. We are crying with them. We are hurting with them. God will help. We don't know what we have to do, but ultimately God is great. He will bring an end to this. We hope soon in our days, and they should have back their homes in a free Palestine and Gaza entirely. We should live together in peace.
Thank you, sir. Our PGPF trustees, via Tan Sri Nurian, Tan Sri Sam, and Dr. Julai, will definitely convert your message to His Excellency President. Thank you, Rabbi. You are a living proof that not all Jews are Zionists. A quick note, ladies and gentlemen. We are now being live streamed on multiple platforms. For your information, this colloquium can be viewed on the PGPF, Perdana Global Peace Foundation, My Care, and Muslim Care YouTube and social media. You are also being live streamed by Astro AWANI. This year, Dr. Zarmi is nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize after years of activism in human rights and works in genocide scholarship covering studies from Asia to the West. Dr. Zarmi, please begin with your intellectual discourse on the topic Destruction of Law in Israel, Genocidal Depopulation of Palestine. Sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the organizers, and also my sincere wish to Dr. Matthew to be able to return to his normal schedule. I also like to take this opportunity to express my personal and deep gratitude to the people of Malaysia. Back in 2012, as you know, my own country that likes to call itself Buddhist began what my wife and I called the slow-burning genocide of Rohingya Muslims in Western Myanmar. And I was the first. And for a long time, the only Burmese activist and scholar who say we are committing genocide while calling ourselves Buddhist. And at the time, I was teaching in Brunei, and my employer there was more interested in making business deals with the Burmese military junta that was looking to explore natural gas production AWANI and other international investors. So I was told to essentially shut up and say just write academic articles about the genocide published in academic journals, but not to inform the general public within ASEAN or internationally. So I took refuge at the University of Malaya that took me in, and I was allowed complete freedom of academic work to continue on. I want to start by saying that genocide is a crime against all of us who have conscience and compassion. And to me, irrespective of our background in ethnicity or nationality, our political allegiances or geography, what defines us as humans are just two things: conscience and compassion. And those are two things that bring all of us in this room. And none of us is suffering directly from the Israeli bombs and drones and white phosphorus and other types of weapons of community and mass destructions. And yet here we are. We are prompted to be in this room or to be online watching this event because we feel the pain that Palestinians have been suffering for the last essentially 76 years, since Nakba of 1948. So the history of the conflict did not begin in October 7, 2023. What happened on October 7, if many people think is a provocation by Hamas, is wrong. And if you characterize it for what it is a jailbreak, prison breakout. There were 2 October 7s, but the world only knows October 7 of 2023. On October 7, 1944, just several months before the Soviet Red Army overran the Auschwitz and drove out the SS and Nazis on January 27. There was a prison revolt, and the Jewish Sonderkommandos who were tasked to take care of crematorium after the SS did their business of mass guessing Jewish victims as well as non-Jewish victims, roughly 1.2 million in vast Auschwitz camp. A group of Sonderkommandos, with the help of Polish workers that came in to work in the camp, killed 4 SS officers and blew up the crematorium. Number 4. There are 4. So the crematorium was blown up partially because they were not professionals. They knew that their turn will come. And so it happened on October 7, 1944. I've been to Auschwitz 4 times, spoke there, did a film about it to educate my own Burmese people about what genocide was, what the international law mandated states to prevent, not simply punish the perpetrators. Actually, I didn't have any Palestinian friends until October 7th, last year. My first encounter with the Palestinian was not pleasant. I was a young student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I was working as a part-time student worker in a grocery store owned by a Palestinian professor, a scientist. Instead of stocking the cans and vegetables, I was just simply reading at the cashiers. So he sacked me. So that was my first experience with Palestine, a Palestinian person. So I got sacked. You know, if you're a student, poor and struggling, and you lost the first job you got, you're pretty angry at your employer. But I take the genocidal crime seriously because it is an affront to all of us who consider ourselves decent human beings. And the second point I want to make is, I came to the subject of genocide through a very direct link to the Nazi genocide. One of my academic advisors, who became a very close mentor at the university there back in 1992 until 1998, was a German-American named Robert Cale. He was born in Milwaukee, just outside of Milwaukee. And when the Second World War broke out and the United States entered the war in Europe, because of his German language fluency, he spoke German at home with his migrant German parents. And he was at the time studying at Harvard, so he enlisted to go and fight the Nazis. And he was sent to one of the Allied occupied areas to be military intelligence interrogator of SS officers who surrendered. And then he wrote his thesis in the 1950s, right after the war, on Himmler and SS, and became a leading scholar. I was studying with him, looking at my own country's military and the way in which the military brainwashed its rank and file to do unspeakable atrocities, the atrocities that the Rohingyas suffered for decades in Western Myanmar. So I was already well acquainted with the genocidal ideology, genocidal objectives and methods. And many of you know there's a verb, there's a saying in English, there are a million ways to skin a cat. For certain types of atrocities to qualify, you don't need lawyers and International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court or any legal education to understand that some crimes are genocide. The lay public, many of us, I'm not legally trained, but I study law as a matter of interest and practical relevance. We must not look to the lawyers or the court to pronounce certain things to be genocide. And the Genocide Watch founder, Gregory Stanton, when he was here at the UN and at the University of Malaya, when we were doing the People's Tribunal on Myanmar's crimes against Rohingya Muslims, Myanmar Muslims, and the Kachin Christian people back in 2017, made a very incisive remark. And by the time the court arrives, victims of all death, that's the situation we have in Palestine. I was outside the International Court of Justice, the Peace Palace in The Hague, protesting in support of Palestine, South Africa. On the day that South Africa opened its case in January this year. I was also at the ICJ having a brief meeting with the Malaysian Foreign Minister, who gave his oral intervention at the ICJ in the case that were filed by about 51 member states, asking the ICJ to give its advisory opinion on the basis of UN General Assembly resolution on the status or legal consequences of Israel's 57 years of occupation and usurpation of sovereignty in breach of the right of self-determination that belonged to the Palestinian people. I want to convey one personal episode. Many of you know the Israeli intelligence organization Shin Bet, and that's the subject of Spielberg's film Munich, the Shin Bet assassins traveling across Europe and taking out one by one the Palestinian revolutionaries that were involved in attack at the Israeli village in Munich Olympic in 1970. I was in a room with the former head of Shin Bet in London. A small, very ornate room in a very posh hotel in Knightsbridge. He was there, Admiral Army Ayalo, ex-naval admiral. He was there as the chair of Haifa University trustees. He was there to raise money. And money for another study, Palestinian studies. As you know, many of the academics from Haifa University, particularly some of the architects, were involved in building the wall. And I had no clue. I just went there because my friend was ousted Thai Prime Minister Thaksin's Jewish lawyer by the name of Robert Amsterdam, rather high-powered lawyer in London. And at the time, some Burmese are being courted to work with the Thai dissidents for the Thai democratic movement. Thaksin was still in exile in Dubai. So I was invited to come because I was one of the Burmese that they wanted to work with. So I went without checking who the guest of honor was. It turned out it was Army Ayala. And there were about like 20 people in the room, rather rich individuals from different corporations and London's Zionist community. And the gentleman walked in and started talking about Palestine, and this was 2009, and saying that once Netanyahu came back to power, Netanyahu was running for a second election at the time, the two-state solution would be dead, and Israel will be in trouble. And Ami Ayalo gave the reason. The reason was the demographic growth among the Palestinians far outpaced the Israeli demographic growth. Therefore, that threatens the idea, the Zionist objective of maintaining Israel as the majority Jewish state. So therefore, Palestinians must be pushed out with their own small piece of land. That's one school of thought. And then Netanyahu is different. I want to read a quote in relation to what I've just said and see if you can recognize where the quote might come from. We are obliged to depopulate. We shall have to develop a technique of depopulation. If you ask me what I mean by depopulation, I mean the removal of the entire racial unit, and that is what I intend to carry out. That's verbatim quote attributed to Adolf Hitler by one of his writer friends, Dr. Hermann Rauschig. This was quoted by Raphael Lemkin, who coined the word genocide, the Polish Jewish brilliant legal mind, in his access room in the Nazi-occupied Europe. This was published So in 1942, but the quote came from or was dated as early as 1932, 1 year before the Nazis came to power in the next year. Let me continue reading this. In the New York Times Book Review, published on 18th February 1940, of Rausching's The Voice of Destruction, published in 1940, the same year, the reviewer Ferdinand Jr. wrote, quoting Rausching, he, meaning Hitler, he said the war of the future would consist of aerial attacks, stupendous in their mass effect, surprise, terror, sabotage, assassination from within, the murder of leading men, overwhelming attacks on all weak points in the enemy's defense, unquote. While guests, including Dr. Rausching, were sipping tea and nibbling German snacks, Hitler proceeded to thunder, "We may be destroyed, but if we are, we shall drag the world with us, a world in flames." We recognize these words in today's reality. You know what's happening in the Middle East, the widening conflict and all that. And so I think we need to recognize that Israel is not simply waging a war against Hamas. That is a Western propaganda. There is no war. Jewish people did not have the war with the Nazis. They were depopulated from Europe, or out of 12 million in total. 5 million, 6 million, whatever the numbers, they were decimated by design. You know, Lancet, one of the oldest medical journals in the world, published staggering figures. Over 186,000 Palestinians of all ages, civilians, men, women, elderly, children, infants, pregnant women, they've been murdered directly or indirectly. What the Hamas Ministry of Health reported is only what is known as direct death. And the rabbi talked about, or the Dr. Hans talked about millions of tons of rubble. We don't know how many bones, how many babies were there. We only saw them as like, you know, rubble, physical destruction. Almost 200,000 Palestinians of all ages and counting in the last 10 months. And even Hun Sen, known as, you know, autocratic leader of Cambodia, 2 months ago, specifically asked the question, killing children every day by the hundreds. Is it not genocide? What is the West doing? What the West is destroying the international law as such. If you look at the ICJ cases since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, you see black and white, day and night, contrast to these cases by Western powers. 33 Western states need lawyers and International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court or any legal education to understand that some crimes are genocide. The lay public, many of us, I'm not legally trained, but I study law as a matter of interest and a practical relevance. We must not look to the lawyers or the court to pronounce certain things to be a genocide.
and the Genocide Watch founder, Gregory Stanton, when he was here at the UN at the University of Malaya, when we were doing the People's Tribunal on Myanmar's crimes against Rohingya Muslims, Myanmar Muslims, and the Kachin Christian people back in 2017, made a very incisive remark that by the time the court arrives, victims are all dead. That's the situation we have in Palestine. I was outside the International Court of Justice, the Peace Palace in The Hague, protesting in support of Palestine or South Africa. On the day that South Africa opened its case in January this year. I was also at the ICJ having a brief meeting with the Malaysian Foreign Minister, who gave his oral intervention at the ICJ in the case that were filed by about 51 member states, asking the ICJ to give its advisory opinion on the basis of UN General Assembly resolution on the status or legal consequences of Israel's 57 years of occupation and usurpation of sovereignty in breach of the right of self-determination that belongs to the Palestinian people. I want to convey one personal episode. Many of you know the Israeli intelligence organization Shin Bet, and that's the subject of Spielberg's film Munich. The Shin Bet assassins traveling across Europe and taking out one by one the Palestinian revolutionaries that were involved in attack at the Israeli village in the Munich Olympic in 1970. I was in the room with the former head of Shin Bet in London, a small, very ornate, room in a very posh hotel in Knightsbridge. He was there, Admiral Army Ayalon, ex-naval admiral. He was there as the chair of Haifa University trustees. He was there to raise money. And money for another study, Palestinian studies. As you know, many of the academics from Haifa University, particularly some of the architects, were involved in building the wall. And I had no clue. I just went there because my friend was ousted Thai Prime Minister Thaksin's Jewish lawyer by the name of Robert Amsterdam, a rather high-powered lawyer in London. And at the time, some Burmese are being quoted to work with the Thai dissidents for the Thai democratic movement. Thaksin was still in exile in Dubai. So I was invited to come because I was one of the Burmese that they wanted to work with. And so I went without checking who the guest of honor. It turned out it was Army Island. And there were about like 20 people in the room, rather rich individuals from different corporations and London's Zionist community. And the gentleman walked in and started talking about Palestine, and this was 2009, and saying that once Netanyahu came back to power, Netanyahu was running for a second election at the time, the two-state solution would be dead, and Israel will be in trouble. And Ami Ayalon gave the reason. The reason was the demographic growth among the Palestinians far outpaced the Israeli demographic growth. Therefore, that threatens the idea, the Zionist objective of maintaining Israel as the majority Jewish state. So therefore, Palestinians must be pushed out with their own, small piece of land. That's one school of thought. And then Netanyahu is different one. I want to read a quote in relation to what I've just said and see if you can recognize where the quote might come from. We are obliged to depopulate. We shall have to develop a technique of depopulation. If you ask me what I mean by depopulation, I mean the removal of the entire racial unit, and that is what I intend to carry out. That's verbatim quote attributed to Adolf Hitler by one of his writer friends, Dr. Hermann Rausching. This was quoted by Raphael Lemkin, who coined the word genocide, the Polish Jewish brilliant legal mind, in his exit rule in the Nazi-occupied Europe. This was published so in 1942, but the quote came from or was dated as early as 1932, 1 year before the Nazis came to power the next year. Let me continue reading this. In the New York Times Book Review, published on 18th February 1940, of Rausching's The Voice of Destruction, published in 1940, the same year, the reviewer Ferdinand Jr. wrote, quoting Rausching, he, meaning Hitler, he said the war of the future would consist of aerial attacks, stupendous in their mass effect, surprise, terror, sabotage, assassination from within, the murder of leading men, overwhelming attacks on all weak points in the enemy's defense, unquote. While guests, including Dr. Rausching, were sipping tea and nibbling German snacks, Hitler proceeded to thunder, "We may be destroyed, but if we are, we shall drag the world with us, a world in flames." We recognize these words in today's reality. You know what's happening in the Middle East, the widening conflict and all that. And so I think we need to recognize that Israel is not simply waging a war against Hamas. That is a Western propaganda. There is no war. Jewish people did not have the war with the Nazis. They were depopulated from Europe, or out of 12 million in total. 5 million, 6 million, whatever the numbers, they were decimated by design. Lancet, one of the oldest medical journals in the world, published staggering figures. Over 186,000 Palestinians of all ages, civilian, men, women, elderly, children, infants, pregnant women, they've been murdered directly or indirectly. What the Hamas Ministry of Health reported is only what is known as direct death. And the rabbi talk about, or the Dr. Hans talk about millions of tons of rubble. We don't know how many bones, how many babies were there. We only saw them as rubble, physical destruction. Almost 200,000 Palestinians of all ages and counting in the last 10 months. And even Honsan, known as, autocratic leader of Cambodia. 2 months ago, specifically asked a question, killing children every day by the hundreds. Is it not genocide? What is the West doing? Well, the West is destroying the international law as such. If you look at the ICJ cases since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, you see black and white, day and night, contrast to these cases by Western powers. 33 Western states supported the state of Israel, Ukraine in its case against Russian Federation. 33 states. And Germany filed a separate case. Of all the states in the world, Germany committed 2 known genocides. One in Namibia, 1904, 1908, and then the Nazi genocide, the Holocaust, the Shoah in the 1930s and 40s. And Germany required its citizens, or new citizens, to swear to the statement that they support the existence of another Nazi-like state. And this was something that people like Einstein foresaw. Back in the 1940s, there was a letter published by the New York Times, not today, back in 1948, a few months before, or I think the same year, the state of Israel was declared a sovereign independent state. Einstein, Hannah Arendt, and other leading Jewish intellectuals and philosophers in the United States vehemently opposed the issuance of visa to Menachem Begin, the founder of Likud party, Netanyahu's party. Issuance of U.S. visa to come to U.S. for fundraising. And these Zionists, as Rabbi Weiss pointed out, many of them are Marxist influence. I consider myself Marxist influence. That we look at societies and economies as competing interests, and history as, if you're not a religious person, unfolding process of people pursuing competing interests. That's one explanation. But none of the religious or practicing Jewish individuals were part of the founding group. Golda Meir was there. She was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, moved from Kiev, where the Ukrainian Russians were holding signs, kill the Christ killers. They cowered in their basement or whatever little homes they had in those days, 1900, 1890. So these secular, radical, revolutionary political Zionists or Jews, they decided to adopt a twin strategy. One is the model of tried and tested settler colonialist land grab that has produced countries like the United States, Canada, vast places in Latin America, and closer to us, Australia. These were settler colonies. They were all invariably built on corpses of millions of indigenous people, like Palestinians. And so when the entire Western, in quote, civilization came to aid finance, arm, protect, and propagandize for Israel. They are simply repeating what they've been doing for the last 300, 400 years. So there's an ideological affinity, right, between how the West was built itself, the wealth, the domination, the control of the rest of the world and the rest of us, and what Israel is doing. The only thing is that Israel is doing it in an age where international law is taken seriously, norms are expected to be absorbed by states and individuals, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is used as a rallying cry to stop these atrocities. And finally, the Zionist ideology has an inherent strategy of adopting what Golda Meir openly called a mother colony. They need imperial patronage for protection, for money, for weapons. Is when the Zionists started, they were very, very poor, and they were patronized by the American citizens, and later by the United States government since Kennedy's time in the 1960s. So what we are seeing today is, in the name of Israel's self-defense, Israel is committing a textbook example, aided and abetted by entire Western liberal democratic world, including US, UK, Germany, France, European Union, and all of that. So one of the greatest casualties of the genocide is not just simply the Palestinian lives, the international. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zani. May you continue your successful activism journey and continue to educate to energize peace. A quick note from our multimedia team. We are also being live streamed by Al Jazeera. Thank you. The next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, also a scholar and activist of the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. Please welcome Professor Dr. Muhammad Nazari bin Ismail, Chairman of BDS Malaysia. Professor Dr. Nazari, do educate us on your topic, the role and impact of the BDS movement in ending apartheid and colonialism in Palestine. Sir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning to everyone. Thank you very much, the organizers, for having me here. I will go straight to my presentation on the slides about BDS. The introduction about the situation in Palestine has been given by Rabbi and also our panelists before, so I don't have to go and talk about it. So I go straight to the issue of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Can I get the slide moving, please? I will have to ask my panelists to turn the display around to take a look. Okay. So this has been covered by our fellow panelists just now, Dr. Mao, Rabbi, and Dr. Tunek. So I won't spend too much on this. I go to the next one, please. Okay, the global BDS movement was launched in 2005 by Palestinian civil societies, supported by 170 Palestinian NGOs across a broad spectrum, from Islamists, Marxists, liberal, and also Christian Palestinians as well. So in other words, the BDS movement is supported by basically all Palestinians. There are three components of Palestinian society: the refugees in exile, Palestinians under occupation in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, as well as the discriminated Palestinian citizens of the illegal state of Israel or the historic Palestine. Next, please. And that three components of the Palestinian society help us to understand the three demands of the BDS movement. Number one is to recognize and promote the right of return of Palestinian refugees. This is enshrined in the United Nations Resolution 194, passed in 1948. The second one is the ending of the occupation of Palestinian lands and the blockade of Gaza, which is passed by the United Nations, recognized under Resolution 242, recently also stated by the ICJ, as we know, reinforced again. And the third one is the ending of oppression and discrimination of Palestinians living in historic Palestine, now called Israel. So these are the three demands of the BDS movement. And as long as these three demands are not met, we call upon people of conscience around the world to boycott Israel and to boycott all complicit organizations. The BDS movement is coordinated by the BDS National Committee, which was set up in 2007 after a conference in Ramallah. And the body coordinates, as I mentioned just now, coordinates the BDS campaigns all over the world. And the General Council of BNC is made of groups that cut across Palestinian society. I mentioned also Islamic, seculars, left-wing, trade unions, nationalists, etc. And these are some of the current members of the BNC, all the civil societies in Palestine. Next, please. Now, BDS Malaysia was set up in 2015 by Malaysian NGOs, Sharif now, My Care now, Viva Palestina, Al-Quds Foundation, and some individuals. And we formally registered ourselves in 2016, and we have organization members as well as individual members. Next, please. And these are the founding organization members of BDS Malaysia. Next. Next. So we are part of the global BDS movement, and we work closely with the BDS National Committee, and we refer to the BDS National Committee, BNC, on policy issues. And we call all Malaysians to be part of the global BDS movement to help strengthen it. And now we really need to help the BDS movement because, as we can see around the world, some governments are simply ignoring what's happening in Palestine. Many governments are simply ignoring. Their leaders can speak about it, but they are not willing to do much. Some, of course, like the Americans and some European countries are helping in the genocide. So it's left for us. Some people say we are very frustrated looking at what's happening in genocide going on, nobody's stopping. What can we do about it? This is what we are offering. We are saying that, yes, you can do something about it by supporting the BDS movement and engaging in efforts to boycott Israel and organizations that are complicit. Next. Alhamdulillah, in Malaysia, we are supported by many NGOs. I have the list here. Almost all NGOs that are involved in Palestine cause are supporting us. Next, please. Next. Now, the BDS movement is inspired by what happened in South Africa, how the apartheid regime in South Africa collapsed in 1994. It was set up in 1948. And you can see some of the manifestation of apartheid, where even the blacks are not even allowed to go to some parts of the beaches in South Africa. Next, please. Next. And what happened was they were boycotted by the global community. South Africa was boycotted by the global community. It wasn't easy, but there was efforts by groups and individuals, educating people about the injustice that was happening in South Africa. And eventually, governments decided to boycott South Africa as well. They were not allowed to participate in sports. They were not allowed to participate in football, in cricket, in Olympics, and that broke their spirit. Unfortunately, that's what's happening now. Israel is going to participate in the Olympics. FIFA, I was informed, deferred their decision to kick out Israel from the World Sporting Football Association, and this is why we need to work harder and harder, because what's happening as we know, in Palestine is many times worse than what happened in South Africa. But South Africa apartheid regime started in 1948 and ended in 1994. Israel, the illegal state, was formed in 1948, but it still continuing its genocide against the Palestinian people. Why? The only thing I can say is because the world community is not doing enough. And that is why we have to do more. Next. So some photos of what happened in South Africa before. Next. These are, but the end of apartheid in South Africa was in 1948, and Nelson Mandela became the leader of free South Africa. Next. Okay. Next. All right. So in other words, it is possible when a country that is committing injustice towards another group just because they belong to another race or religion, if the global community engage in boycott efforts, you can bring that injustice to an end. And we are inspired by what happened in South Africa. Next bit, Sonia. The BDS strategy is a bit different from some other organizations that call for the boycott of Israel. We pursue what's called targeted boycott, because as we know, there's injustice that's happening in South Africa, in Palestine, has been going on since before 1948. But unfortunately, many organizations are insensitive to that. So what happened is that many companies set up operations in so-called Israel, right? By right, no company should go there because of what happened. Because of what happened and what is happening over there, there shouldn't be any operation. Every company should boycott Israel, right? Unfortunately, people are insensitive. And therefore, you can see many companies operating in Israel. McDonald's, KFC, Apple, Toyota, Mercedes, BMW, hundreds and hundreds of companies. And to boycott, to call for the global community to boycott all these companies will require too much effort. That's why the BDS National Committee decided that we must pursue a smarter strategy called targeted boycotts. We will target some identified companies using several criteria. So we go next. These are some of the companies. And we categorize the efforts into four. One is consumer boycott targets, divestment and exclusion targets, pressure targets, and organic boycott targets. So I've explained a bit about our strategy and the choice of some of these companies. If you look on the left-hand corner there, you see Caltex. Why is Caltex chosen? This will help to explain what's happening over there. Caltex is owned by Chevron, an American company, oil exploration company, which digs up for oil in the Mediterranean Sea and gives money, billions and billions, to Israel. Also of the coast of Gaza, which belongs to Palestinians, and therefore Chevron is completely complicit with Israel. And that is why we call everybody to boycott Chevron, and in Malaysia, Chevron is represented by Caltex. No, up again, sorry, up, yeah. An example is Puma. Why do we choose Puma? We want to educate people. Many people before this don't even know there's a place called West Bank. People are too ignorant. They didn't know it's called West Bank. They didn't know that West Bank is identified by the international community supposed to be Palestine there, occupied since 1967. But what happened is that the Israeli regimes have been building settlements in the West Bank. Settlements which are basically towns. And what happened is that they set up football clubs. And these football clubs are affiliated with the Israeli Football Association. So, and this Israeli Football Association is sponsored by Puma. So what we do is we explain, people ask, why Puma? We say, because Puma sponsored the Israeli Football Association, which has got clubs in the occupied territory in the West Bank, which they are not supposed to be there. They're supposed to get out from there completely, but they set up towns as well as football clubs. So what happened is that when we talk about that, it helps to explain the situation in Palestine. So that is the reason for choosing some of the companies. But some companies are a bit difficult to boycott on the right, the divestment and exclusion targets. Caterpillar. Why do we choose Caterpillar? It's because they supply bulldozers to the Israeli military. It's called D9, huge bulldozers that are now you can see them in actions through the news, how they crush Palestinians that are camping outside, they were camping outside Ashifa Hospital. Right? They came in and then they just drove over them. Hundreds. And there was an admission by one of the drivers of the Caterpillar machines. He said that he drove over hundreds of Palestinians and killed them and then buried them alive. This is the favorite machine of the Israeli army, supplied by Caterpillar. So when we choose that, it helps to explain the atrocities committed by the Israelis. Unfortunately, not everybody here buy Caterpillar every month, right? It's actually bought by companies. So what we do is we call companies to exclude them. So it's called exclusion targets. And one of the campaigns that we are running at the moment is to convince Sime Darby to end its distribution contract with Caterpillar. And Sime Darby is under PNB. So I spoke to the ex-chairman of the PNB, explained to him, I showed him the videos of the Caterpillar machines being used to crush Palestine and demolish Palestinian homes. So I said to him, please, you should consider ending your distributorship contract with Caterpillar, because Caterpillar is completely complicit. Unfortunately, until today, they are still distributing because they are making money. So it seems that profit is more important than human rights. So who is going to help me? I met them. I met the chairman a couple of years ago. Until now, they are still doing that. Why? Because Malaysians are not supporting us. I will tell you straight away. Because we campaigned and we spoke to people, right? People simply ignored us. So now I'm calling everybody here. If you are serious about Palestinian cause, then this is what you can do. So, Caterpillar, make sure that Sime Darby no longer distribute Caterpillar machines, so that Sime Darby should tell Caterpillar, sorry, we don't want to distribute your machine anymore because you are helping Israel to kill thousands of Palestinians. You are completely complicit. We don't want to have anything to do with complicit organizations. So that's why all nations should should do this. BlackRock. Okay, why? BlackRock is also supposed to be boycotted. Simply because they are complicit. BlackRock is the own shares in weapons manufacturers that are used to kill Palestinians. Not only that, they of course they also contribute a lot to the Israeli economy by setting up companies over there. And it's mentioned by the nation in its recent report issued in 20th July, 20th June, that BlackRock is complicit and guilty of human rights violations in occupied territories, in Gaza. By United Nations was about in Gaza. So if United Nations mentions about BlackRock, why is our country having a deal with that company? It's completely unacceptable. Okay, I got some other companies to explain here. Vision, right there. Vision. Not many people know about that, right? Right-hand corner at the bottom there. They are the supplier of CCTV equipment. I hope there is no CCTV equipment here with Pension. But because many people didn't know about this, I went to a masjid recently, mosque, Prejumat. I saw a CCTV there, Vision. That is a company that supplies CCTV or surveillance equipment, cameras, to Israel. They use this to technology of facial recognition to arrest and kill Palestinians. Now, it's reported that they use it combined with artificial intelligence with drones and cameras. They will shoot Palestinians using the camera, and once they identify, they are in the list, that's it. No question asked, they will shoot and kill. So Vision, this is the Chinese company, is completely complicit, and no Malaysian companies, no government departments should buy or purchase equipment from Vision. We got some other example here. I have got Google here. This is what's called pressure targets. So why do we call pressure targets? Because we are not calling people to boycott Google. We have to be strategic. Because if we call people to boycott Google, then
we Google every day,
yeah,
Professor. That's a problem.
That's why we say we don't call you to boycott Google. We call it pressure targets. What do? You write emails. You organize conferences. Yeah, you write articles to condemn Google for being complicit because they supply Nimbus technology, database and information, other information technology assistance to the Israeli government and military. So that is the reason why Google is complicit. But our strategy is not to call people to boycott, but to put pressure on the company to end its relationship with Israel. Similarly with Intel, somewhere up there, we have, okay, this is an old target. We have Intel inside there actually, because Intel is also complicit because they also supply, have technological collaboration with Israel. And we cannot call people to boycott Intel, but we call them to put pressure. Okay, so, so the Intel is over there. Sorry, divestment and exclusion targets. You can see Intel there. So we are not putting it under consumer boycott targets. We are putting under exclusion targets. Don't exclude them from future business contracts. To put pressure on them. Okay, it's okay.
Prof, we are running.
All right, we are running out of time.
Yes.
Next, please.
We will have a Q&A session with Professor shortly.
So this is the picture of the machine provided by Caterpillar and some other equipment, heavy industry. We go next. So I'm going to end my presentation by just telling the success of BDS targets. And this is a professor and some figures who are boycotting Israel, including Professor Stephen Hawking. Next. Also universities, professors and students, even though in America now, they are very strong supporters of the BS movement. Next. Continue, please, just go quickly. Go, please, quick. through the slide. Towards the last one, please, since Madam Nancy is asking me to stop. There are some victories here when pension funds have divested their investment in, this is in Caterpillar, right? Divest from the company. So this is divestment study by the Norway pension fund. So if Norway can do this, why can't Sam Darby and PNB do this? Next, so these are success that Puma has announced. Puma has announced they are no longer they have ending a policy of Israeli settlement. Okay, because of our boycott targets. Next, go on. Next, continue, please. Continue with just some successes of companies selling a stake because of BDS efforts. Next, please. Next. Continue, please. Continue. This is just a quick one. Harvard Crimson students in Harvard University issued a newsletter up one to show back. Sorry, that's Harvard Crimson just now. Never mind. Continue. Here. Can you see here? This is the Crimson. This is the Harvard students newsletter in support of BDS and a free Palestine. Can you imagine that? The students at Harvard University. Next. Continue. Next. Okay, stop here. To show how scared Israel is of BDS, at a conference aimed at combating the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement at Jerusalem International Convention on March 2018, Israeli Minister of Transport, his name Israel Katz, called for the focused civilian elimination of the leadership of BDS. So they are so scared now. They're warning us they are going to eliminate us, but inshallah we are not scared of them, right? You are going to be with us.
Takbir.
Okay, let's continue. American government is supporting anti-BDS law to make BDS efforts also illegal in the US. That shows how scared Israel is of BDS efforts. Next. Okay. The Senate passed an anti-BDS bill. Next. I just want to show you how the Zionist leader is saying. This is article written by a Zionist leader. BDS is gaining traction in the corporate world. Unfortunately, this is him saying the BDS movement is gaining traction in the corporate world, and so that's what he's saying, right? Meaning that now they are facing a problem because the BDS movement is gaining traction. This is an article by a Zionist leader. Okay, let's finish it. Go to the conclusion. So BDS efforts are crucial in the fight against Zionist apartheid regime. We are getting stronger, alhamdulillah, getting stronger now because of the awareness of the apartheid as well as genocide now going on in Gaza. So we need to foster a stronger spirit of justice and human rights among people so that justice and human rights should be above profit. Okay. And our country must also be economically resilient and democratic in order to make sure everybody has got a voice. And unfortunately, at the moment, there is some tendency even in our country now to silence the voice against the Zionists. So we hope that we have more freedom to promote the BDS efforts. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Professor Dr. Nazari. Inshallah, we will continue to support your movement for a free Palestine. Lastly, a Malaysian that needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Sri Utama Dr. Rais Yatim on his topic, Two-State Solution for Palestine. Dipersilakan Tan Sri.
Assalamualaikum. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin wa bihi nasta'in. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I must make an admission. Firstly, we charge that Israel has robbed the Palestinians of their land. Today, I charge ourselves, you have stolen my time. This is in jest. It is not in the facility of the faculty of mind to charge anyone. But at the outset, while we have a limited time segment left, I'm trying to segmentize the arguments that will propel us towards a harder push, a more collective approach, besides being more rational within the embryo of saving Palestine and looking at humanity at closer focal length, so that we know what we talk about and we know what to do after this as a community, as a nation, and as a collective member of ASEAN, perhaps as a member of the world community itself. Before I proceed, I must have this as a share. Dari mana hendak ke mana, dari sana hendak kemari. Hari ini bagaimana kita semua ceria hati. The stealing of time, perhaps it can occur on my side. So I need guidance from the charming announcer. When shall I stop? Like Shakespeare said, could I give it to the time of the devil, or do I go and see the wealth? But this afternoon, I will economize of what I have to say. Firstly, it is not my business today to summarize each and everyone's contribution. From Rabbi Weiss to the other three speakers, they have contributed the mental output, the crystallization of their thinking towards what we should do in future. And with that, you tell me, how much do I have to say? In fact, I don't have to say anything. You have said it all. And when I see the gleam of light from the rabbi's eyes, I thought he would never stop. But he did, because the shrill point by the announcer pointed to him that we have to go on. Firstly, you have heard about the story of the Pol Pot. From 1992 to 1995, he had killed 1.3 million people in Cambodia. The world said, there you are, that's genocide. And with that, the world gave its assistance. Dr. Mahathir, our Tun Dr. Mahathir, played a major role in the Bosnia-Herzegovina malfunction of humanity. And Milkovic, you will remember, was put behind bars. But I have to say something about Tun's contribution in both ways. One, it is the way towards pointing out to the world. You look at Bosnia-Herzegovina and do what you think that is just. The world did its point well. I'm so fortunate, ladies and gentlemen, that I did serve the Wisma Putra of this country, or the foreign ministry, on 2 occasions. There was one night in New York with Tun Dr. Mahathir, plus my good friend, Said. And we went to a congregation of Jews in the evening. What the Rabbi Weiss had said is true. Our friends, the Jews, said, Dr. Mahathir, we are here to lend you the thinking process of what is right for Palestine. And some of these still ring in my mind today. And looking at you, let us share some of these points so that in the end of the session today, we could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I will begin again by saying that the point to be shared by all of us could become futile because Israel, with the kind of push and endeavor by Netanyahu, and by the acceptance of his detailed reports to Washington, nobody can go against Israel because in the Malay term in this country, Israel adalah anak buah Amerika. From 7 October until today, $12.3 billion came to Israel. Reported in Google, perhaps, Professor, you could put that in to thank Google. And it says that money rightly done division-wise, they gave the best form of aerospace stealth, aerospace espionage, aerospace quality to devastate and control the life of Palestinians. It could be a case in future where we can ask ourselves again, what has happened to the Convention on Genocide? America said 2 weeks ago that it is a matter of opinion and the time has come for us to conglomeratize the efforts of Israel as expected. But on one side here, Palestine is in the middle of the Arab world. I am asking, what are the Arab League doing? What are the OIC guys doing? And perhaps I should ask, what is NAM doing? Is NAM numbed? Is OIC, you just stand on the side and say, Ana OIC? Or the league, have you formed the football instead of the kind of conglomerate that we need? These questions must be asked. Malaysia is about 8,000 kilometers away. We feel the brotherhood, the sisterhood. But the heat of the moment is there. And if our Arab friends do not feel the way we do, if the OIC members don't feel what we feel today, then ours is a secondary role. I don't blame too much Siemens or the companies that Professor has said. But the first responsibility, we must dawn this upon them. Our brothers and sisters in that region must formulate an effort so that it gleams through Sahara, so that you shine through the pyramids, that you are responsible for your brothers in Palestine. Thank you. In bahasa, I call it makan kacang bulat-bulat kalau nak bertepuk kuat-kuat. I know we are far away, perhaps you are overwhelmed. Not by my delivery, but by the fact that you are hungry. I beseech you, as the Bard says, the time has come. And the time is here for us to say something about what we should do after looking at the 38,000 dead. After we look at the annihilation of the schools, the hospitals, the protection areas, and what have you. Padang terpukur, bahasa Melayu, sudah wujud di Palestine. Yet, we don't have enough, and yet we are saying, what do we do after this? It is not easy to do, but it is easy to suggest. The atrocities of Palestine, in essence, is the atrocity governed by the Muslim world, but let go by the Muslims themselves, number one. Number two, can we blame America, the United Kingdom? Yes, we can. But like the rabbi had said, Rabbi Weiss, they had prepared their minds well ahead what to do with the civilization that is bordering Israel. Of course, I am given the topic that I should talk on the two-state matter, but that is too restricted because the year 1992 and 1995 are long gone. Yitzhak Rabin is already gone. Yeah. Clinton, you remember, is already vacationing. Nobody is remembering about the two agreements, the Oslo Accord anymore now. If the Oslo Accord is to be reinvigorated, we must have a mechanism. And that mechanism is the United Nations must first change its facade. Otherwise, we can never do anything. By virtue of Article 16 of the Security Council. Here comes America sitting in that lofty chair, and it says, I hereby veto that decision by virtue of Article 16 with reference to Article B4 and 6 and 8. The guys who go there are already mesmerized, and when Uncle Sam says that, it's done. Let me ask you, how many times has the General Assembly amended the decision of the Security Council? Twice. One pertaining to Yugoslavia, the other pertaining to the position of Japan. Beyond that, America has its field day. That is the first problem that we have. Thanks again to Dr. Mahathir when I was the FM, that's Foreign Minister. We were talking about ways and means of making the Security Council a truly reflective body that will sanction when everybody has equal rights, regardless of whether you have more money or more aeroplanes or more guns, ammunition, and cannons. When Dr. Mahathir spoke in 1987 at the General Assembly, he gave a roaring speech and he got a roaring applause. After that, Uncle Sam looked at us sheepishly, but they went on with their business. Therefore, illustrative as it is, I would like to suggest that all NGOs have to look at the Security Council's power. About it. Write articles on it. Do slides. We give our illustrations to the world. The UN, if it wants to be effective, the UN has to change. And change must first start with the Security Council. Otherwise, nothing can be done. Terima kasih. Kali ini kuat sikit bunyinya. I have to do it in this way because I can notice that you are in a restive mood already. Therefore, I take the opportunity to assuage you, to deliver that mental attitude. There are two courts now that we are concerned with. One is the ICJ, and the other is the ICC. The ICJ was formed in 1948 under the guise of the United Nations, and all the 15 judges are there. I wish to congratulate them because, as a matter of 9 days ago or 10 days ago, the decision was publicized. Number one, Israel should give up those lands which they have taken from the Palestinian people. That I think you should clap. Very happy. But that court almost intuitively did not mention about the question of mass killing. Because it says the propulsion of that idea was not forcibly put forward. Well, judges always have a say at the end of the day. You stand down there and they deliver to you. But the one regarding the surrendering back of the land is the most fortuitous and the most significant. Whilst not wanting to opine on the crime, massive killing, because not enough of first-hand knowledge, it seems, we take that with reservation. Coming to the ICC, created under the Rome Statute, it has bigger teeth, but no police to do the bidding. What it says that it is wrong for Israel to take up arms and wipe out the population of Palestine on the one hand, and restoration of rights must be done. Again, alhamdulillah, the two courts are now enjoined to say what we want to hear. But that is exuberance at the beginning. The sadness is this. It has been written by Stodia Levin, a writer, observing this development, that the ICJ also has no police. The ICJ has to give the report to the Security Council and let the Security Council do its bidding. It will become square one in one way, but the judgment itself is of great value. I would suggest every NGO here get a summary of that judgment for our sake and for the joint efforts for the future against Israel, that country which has now been developed as Rabbi Y said, the state that has become recalcitrant. ICC, with Karim Khan as the prosecutor, he is now leaving his job. Another friend would be coming in to take his job as chief prosecutor. But Karim had done his job, and I believe that his successor will continue with the ICC record on board. So, sharing this news means we are a bit enlightened for the day. Ada sedikit cahaya. There is some nur coming. And we must gallop in that light. To do that, we need a concerted effort. And my query is, as a former foreign minister, why is ASEAN keeping quiet? I don't hear anything about it. After all, there is something like the human charter inside the constitution of ASEAN. Is not the atrocity of Palestine worse than the atrocity in Burma? Is it not something similar to the killing fields in Cambodia? Is it not something similar to Bosnia-Herzegovina? And why is ASEAN not saying collectively? Now, this is rather diplomatic rhetoric, maybe, but I am basing it on the Charter of Justice, on the Charter of Collective Community, on the Charter of Humanity and Human Rights under ASEAN itself. If as a body, ASEAN puts forward a message to the United Nations, to the President of America, to the Prime Minister of UK, the new Labour Party head, something could be heard. It will be a volume bigger than merely the voice of Malaysia or the voice of Indonesia. This has to be thought about. I have written a little note to my good friend, the Foreign Minister, so that this could be brought to the next meeting, so that we could hear something developing towards the end that we want. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now 12:35. I will go to the rudiments of possibilities. The rudiment I have in mind is, number one, we should pursue the two-state existence agreement, or the Oslo Accords, two accords. One, the 1992-93, the other is the 1995. When my good friend Yasser Arafat was still alive, and when he was with me and Tun Dr. Mahathir in Harare, he voiced to us that this is something, he said, he has to see the reality of it before he dies. But he dies earlier. And that also you must look at it. Who poisoned him? And that is beside the point, perhaps. Somebody would be asking me, how do you know? I'm not saying it now, but I'll say it later. The other point is, this is not an easy chessboard. We look again at the Astro Accord, we plot which we want to do. Firstly, it established the autonomous PLO, remember? Then the Hamas got into trouble with the friends who are ruling. Not Hamas is ruling. Notwithstanding, Hamas is also under the same list to be entered as party to future question and answer. If Netanyahu is called forward, Hamas, part of their leaders, would be called also. Because Netanyahu says, you killed 1,228 of my people. But Hamas can say, you wiped out 38,000 of my people. In between the two, I think the arbitrators will come to a conclusion. Nonetheless, for the future of the world, we need the two-state equation to be rethought again. And this must be pushed by ASEAN. It should be pushed by the conglomerative number of people from Europe, from Oslo, from Turkey, and from the Arab world itself, by NAM as well as by OIC. Now, if these 5 or 6 entities are on the forward move, who is there in the General Assembly, you tell me, to oppose it? They dare not. But this has not been done. Perhaps this is a new approach, and many of us may want to speak about it at a later stage at this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we must support the campaign for a ceasefire. But saying this alone is not enough. We should form under the guise of the United Nations Armed Forces and be brought again, sadly, to the Security Council. And I don't have to say what will happen if it goes there, right? Nonetheless, the atmosphere must be created. We should also think about the physical aid to rebuild Gaza. While rebuilding Gaza, Netanyahu, or even from Hamas, must be brought to justice. Like Milko Skovic was receiving, so must Netanyahu receive. But so long as America is still on the verge of doing things as they are, we cannot do much. And if Trump's home soon after November, the story might be lurked by full stops and colons and finally left into oblivion. Saudara-saudari, revamp the UN system. What we had done before, we should pursue. The Foreign Ministry of Malaysia must voice this at the ASEAN platform, as well as at the annual sporadic forums at the General Assembly. The more we talk about this, the more people will understand why the UN has to be revamped. Otherwise, we have no future for peace, because the prefects of the SC will say, nahi, nothing doing, it's done. I have a little bit left, but I think the chairperson has already stood there. A white garment is a front in the air, and I could see it's to the left of my eye. Saudara-saudari, begitulah penyampaian dahulu. Sebab dalam bahasa Melayu, kita berjuang terus. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
As usual, Tan Sri Rais, your factual insights were delivered with eloquence. Thank you, sir. And again, to all the respected speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the Q&A session, we have a special video presentation that we would like to share with all of you. Let us take a moment to watch the video together, and then we will dive into our Q&A session. Thank you all for the attention.
For justice and for international law. Israel's occupation has been declared unlawful by the World Court, which has stipulated that it must be terminated completely and as rapidly as possible. The court also found that illegal Israeli occupation violates the UN Charter, human rights, and international humanitarian law. The court further unequivocally declared that all Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory are illegal and must be dismantled, and that all Israeli settlers must be evacuated. The court declared that Israeli illegal occupation not only violates but eviscerates the Palestinian people's right to self-determination in their own land, including the right to their own state. This ruling couldn't be more timely or sorely needed. The Palestinian people have endured unbearable suffering and injustice for decades. This ruling is a vindication of their steadfastness and perseverance. This right must no longer be denied or deferred. The court made clear that the Palestinian people are the only sovereign in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, and that the international community is under an obligation not just to reaffirm the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, but to see to it that this right is implemented immediately. All states and the UN are now under obligation not to recognize the legality of Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the Q&A session of the program. There are microphones on either side of the auditorium. Kindly queue up to address the speakers in an orderly manner. State your name and organization clearly. Keep your question brief to the speaker you are addressing. Thank you. Please, may we start the Q&A session, please?
friends, my question is still about BlackRock. The Malaysian government is trying to sell 39 Malaysian airports to BlackRock. What is the comment of fellow delegates here? Thank you very much.
Sir, can we have your name?
Ishamudin Rais, NGI, non-governmental individual.
Can we have your name, please?
Isham Rais.
Thank you.
Anybody can answer it, please. About BlackRock. Like why the Malaysian government is trying to sell 39 Malaysian airports?
BlackRock.
Okay, I thought I mentioned it just now. At this stage, I will repeat it again. Just give you a brief background. Malaysian airports with Saudi Khazanah, they have made a decision. They negotiated with GIP before to sell what is it called, ownership, 25% ownership of MHB to GIP. But what happened was, in January this year, BlackRock announced that they are taking over GIP. So it's not common knowledge. Actually, BlackRock announced in their website they are taking over GIP 100%. So it's completely owned by BlackRock. And everybody knows that BlackRock is one of the strongest supporters of the illegal state of Israel, the Zionist regime, and also what is it called? Silence about the genocide in Gaza. Mentioned Larry Fink, the CEO, strong supporter of Israel, strong Zionist supporter, and he mentioned condemned the October 7 operation by Hamas, but it's completely silent about the 40,000 deaths, killing and murder of Palestinians in Gaza. Obviously, a strong supporter of genocide, Zionist genocide in Gaza. So why now the Malaysian government is aware of this, especially since the United Nations came out with a report that says that BlackRock is complicit and is guilty of human rights violations in Gaza. So now we are completely puzzled, because if we are talking about we want to make sure that we want to stop the genocide in Gaza, why are we having a deal with a genocide supporter? Simple as that. It's as simple as that. We have to stop. We have to cancel the deal. We have to tell BlackRock, sorry. The Malaysian government should tell BlackRock, sorry, you are complicit. You are guilty, mentioned by the United Nations as you are complicit in the human rights violation in Gaza. So therefore, we don't want to have any dealing with you. That's what the Malaysian government should do. And I don't understand why they are not saying that at the moment. I do not understand. So I cannot say anything anymore except to say that I cannot understand why they find it so difficult to cancel an agreement or a deal with a genocide supporting organization. Simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Perhaps I just add a line
yes.
towards what has been expressed by the Prof. When the government endorses the participation of an obvious or of an entity that is being proven to be anti-national in that respect, then the government may be termed as complicit. Now, if the government is complicit, the rakyat of this country must take turn to express their views, and you should not stop them from saying so. Therefore, what Hishamuddin has said, I think, is an opening of a broad opportunity for us to ask again, if you are complicit, then you must explain the detail of the deal. What are the details? We do not know. We'll find out.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Sir, if we have another question.
Yeah. My name is Dr. Haizan, Malaysian Radio Agency. Two short questions. Malaysian government seems to be quite quiet, not vocal as before. Like during the time during Bosnia, it seems to us it's a bit quiet. What can we as NGO do to push the government to say more and do more? Not just words, but say more. That's one. Second is, We know US is the imperial master, and the US is dominating United Nations and the rest. What about the consideration of using Article 6 to expel US and Israel from United Nations? Then we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Any takers for the questions?
Of course, I'll take this
Yes.
one. Briefly, and I wish to thank Hazan for this forward-looking question. There are two aspects to it, as I noticed. Why is our government rather quiet, like what we are now here? We are here looking for solutions, but our government doesn't seem to be giving the output equated with the severity of the issue. On that score, we agree. Our government, taking the pace of what Tun Mahathir did before and now, should continue with the good work of querying Israel, of asking Wisma Putra, these are the policies we must enunciate again and remind ourselves of the dangers if we don't. The globalization of Israel's role could multiply, and you have seen some of this happening even in Saudi Arabia. We need not emphasize more, but the trend is there, and the trend is not too good for the country to be too quiet about it. I have mentioned a while ago, ASEAN must speak out, and we request our Datuk Seri Perdana Menteri also say more on the anti-Israel stance and facilitate more aid to our Malaysians in Palestine, whilst endeavoring to champion to get that company called Batu Hitam, Black Rock, out of the equation of MAHP. We must do this equally amongst us here. And on the Article 6, it's easier said than done. You know, there are two ways of putting a motion, and my good friend has already mentioned a bit about it. The majority rule is not with us to put it before the Security Council. Therefore, in order for Article 6 and 18 to be invocative, you have to do a big lobby. And that lobby may take anything from 3 months to 6 months. And that collective bodies, the Arab League, as well as the National League of Egypt, plus the NGOs of the Middle East, plus the OIC, the NAM, if within 6 months we work, I think it could be done. Otherwise, we cannot be. And that has to be on the trial basis of first notice interest. First notice interest is we send the memorandum to the SecGen. The SecGen, I'm sure you understand, he will decipher everything. But you know, even before the SecGen puts it on the agenda, a phone will ring to him. What agenda are you doing today? Now that kind of thing is happening, but we shouldn't be dampened. We should move ahead and change the ways of introducing the issues and the agenda before the preliminary committees of the SecGen that is on the 3rd floor of that charming building in New York. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Tan Sri. I think Dr. Sponik has got something to say.
Yeah, they give you the wrong.
As an outsider, I have to be careful here, but I would like to very much say one thing. As a person who lives far away, I have watched Malaysian foreign policy. And I can tell you one thing. We have a saying in German, don't keep your light under the hood. Show your light. And you have formed, in connection with Gaza, you have formed a coalition of Malaysian NGOs. We do not have that in Germany. Show us the way. Go and challenge outsiders, challenge the world. And you should also realize that there is this fundamental shift in the distribution of decision-making power in the General Assembly, because countries like yours and non-Western countries are increasingly cooperating. Participate. Malaysia has a very powerful, good track record. The tribunals for Iraq, for Gaza, for others give you a fantastic, strong, credible image. Make use of it. Don't use what you're now doing in this, how you react to this conference to yourself. If there is a statement at the end of this meeting, make sure it gets distributed. Use your international contact to make sure it gets out into the wider world. And one last sentence. Keep in mind one thing. The conductor of the international orchestra in the last 80 years or so was a Western conductor with Western instruments of music. The music is shifting. There's a new conductor in the making. Whether people like it or not is irrelevant. You know what I'm talking about. Make use of, don't keep your lights within Malaysia. Bring it across the border. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Stone.
Assalamualaikum. Nama saya Zulkifli Umar. Saya nak beritahu, nak tanyakan si Rais Yatim. Kalau orang-orang Palestin, especially Palestinian people, does not want a two-state government, or two-state, I don't think we should even consider it, especially as what Rabbi Wise said. For example, if Malaysia give up Islamic with communism. So no, of course not, isn't it? So if the question is, should we even consider a two-state government for Palestine? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sahabat kita Dr. Mahong nak terang sikit lagi. Clarify the point. Because he wished to participate.
The question is like this: if the Palestinian people does not want a two-state government, right? Just like Malaysia lah, we also does not want Islam and communists, for example. So we are willing to die for it lah. So if the Palestinian people are willing to die for it, why should we even consider a two-state government? Thank you.
Well, briefly, I can say that what you are saying is actually demeaning to be within the context of what we experience. But secondly, if upon future enlightenment, the Palestinians, perhaps with Hamas or without Hamas, or partly with Hamas or without partly being with Hamas, it could be rekindled. It could be rekindled. To that extent, I think it's logical. So, Dr. Mong?
Thank you very much. You know, as Malaysian people, you should hold your head straight and higher than you currently do, because I'm from this region. My roots are here, but I live in UK. I've been outside the country 34 years. When I look at ASEAN as a club of states or ASEAN as people, I see Malaysian people, Reformasi and all, you know, the Indonesia as well, way ahead of like political states. We have a situation where people are far more advanced in their thinking, in their humanity, than those who are leading this region, the heads of states, number one. Number two, I think on the question of one state versus two-state solution, and there are competing voices from within those who support a free Palestine. And then some of the voices would say, if we call Israel at best an apartheid state like South Africa, or at worst, as I would call, a Nazi-like state, when we have this type of state, there's only one solution. That solution is to dismantle the state as it exists, whether it's an apartheid or a fascist state. Yeah. So the number one goal has to be not necessarily what type of Palestine there should be. Number one has to be, before the Security Council can be reformed, we need to start demanding that the state of Israel as it exists needs to be dismantled the same way South Africa's apartheid is dismantled. Yeah? We cannot have it both ways. And then apartheid was dismantled. And then Afrikaner, white South Africans, they do have a right to live in peace. And they live in peace there, post-apartheid. By the same token, Israeli people or Jewish people around the world have a right to live in peace and dignity and with respect by all of us. That's no question. But Israel as it exists doesn't have the right to exist. Number 3, and finally, I think the question of the future of the Palestinian people, that is for the Palestinian people to decide, not for the supporters, not for the detractors, not for the tormentors. The genocide, because it's been crystallized into a very narrowly defined, codification of crime as a genocide convention, left out 50% of what is originally conceived as genocide. Genocide has 2 parts. We have been dealing with only one part. That is the physical destruction of an identity-based population currently under occupation, Palestinian. The second part of genocide that was clearly articulated, spelled out by Raphael Lemkin, is the imposition of the preferences of the genocidal regime on a tiny or however many surviving population. The discourse of two-state versus one-state solution from outside falls still within that second parameters of genocide. We must not allow ourselves to decide for what Palestinian needs. Let the Palestinian decide what type of state they want, what type of territories they need, what type of Islam or non-Islam or religious system they pursue. At the moment, I don't know if you're aware, UAE and Saudi Arabia are coming up with the type of Islam that is acceptable to Israel. And Israel is pushing it. This is the type of Islam that Palestinians in Gaza must be allowed to practice. What nonsense. And so these 3 points are very crucial. Do not usurp the right of the Palestinians to decide what type of state, what type of culture, what type of society, what type of faith they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. We have one more question.
I'm Ken Chua.
Last question.
Ex-member of parliament and also coordinator for the Secretariat for Palestinian Solidarity with Palestine. My question is a bit broader, especially to Mr. Sputnik and Rabbi. Is that in the view of now in Europe and America, the society have an emergence of the conservative right-wing populism. So how do we position ourselves in the solidarity movement to achieve our aim of liberating Palestine when the situation is quite negative, when the sentiments of the society in Europe and Western societies are getting more conservative? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello? I'm not sure I understood your question completely. You talk about a movement towards more conservatism in Europe. I'm afraid this is not quite correct. One can talk about polarization in Europe into extreme right and extreme left, with a majority of the I'm generalizing, majority of the people somehow fluctuating in between. But the trend right now is clearly towards, if there is a trend, it's towards the left. Look what happened in France. Macron was very clever. He saw right-wing extremism take over. And what he did was he arranged with the left groups a new way of voting. And the new vote was very clearly in favor of the left. In the United Kingdom, you have a Labour Party that has taken over from a conservative group. And you have in Sweden a different picture, you're right there. But overall, as social research has shown in recent months, very clearly is that the population, the people, normal people, they're asked about a geopolitical issue. The answer is that you and I want to hear. More responsibility, more accountability, and a much greater concern for the welfare of individuals. How that, one more sentence, how that translates beyond the borders of individual countries is another matter. If there was a vote tomorrow on Gaza, I guarantee you that all Western European countries, the civil societies would vote like similar, maybe not ideally like we want to hear it, but very much in favor of the rights of the Palestinians and the condemnation of the behavior of the Netanyahu government.
Thank you, Dr. Spodek. We have one last question. Short and simple.
With the help of the Almighty, first of all, I always like to put in perspective that one, my fellow rabbis say we do not get paid for our accomplishments from the Almighty. It's a metaphor. We get paid for doing our work. Basically, the Almighty wants us to do. Accomplishment is in the hands of the Almighty. So we should never get flustered, disappointed. We have to look to the Almighty and say He should accomplish, pray to Him with His benevolence, with His compassion. He should save the people of Palestine, save all this world from all this terrible calamities and Nakba and evil. But the requirement remains, no matter the change of which, if it's extreme right, left, or whatever the time of the rule in the time is, we must keep on doing what is required of us. Now, that said, there is a problem that I've encountered through my many years with God's help of doing this, that I kept on pleading with the very wealthy countries in the Middle East. And I said, why is it always that in the newspapers and all over the Zionists have a narrative? Why isn't there advertisements? They won't take your articles, but advertisements over speaking about the history, that we should speak the anecdotes of our coexistence, Jews living together in every Arab and Muslim land in peace, although we had a different religion, and that the world, the mind of the citizens of the United States and of Europe, that they should not accept that this is a problem of a fight of religion and the Muslims are a danger to the world. They should understand that it's a problem of something, a relatively new thing called a nationalist movement that just recently started, a little over 100 years. And that is where the new neighbor to the block is the problem that was introduced, the interloper. That is where the problem is. So the problem is they keep on using, as you see very clearly, I mean, you see, they're accusing new resolutions, new laws of anti-Semitism. You're not allowed to even wave Palestinian flags in Europe, certain places. It's considered anti-Semitic to speak against the state of Israel. All these issues is one thing that they are using a weapon. Speak up, be clear, constantly be speaking about that there's not, which hasn't been done, mind you, for the many, many years that this is not a conflict of religion, it's a conflict of a flawed, selfish, political movement that has taken over the life. This I think you should do. And whether we may not be, maybe, God forbid, we won't be successful, but we have to do, don't be flustered. The successful come through the Almighty. We can accomplish. And again, we just one little more thing. Again, as Jews, besides the fact we're not allowed to kill a state, we're not allowed to have a state, it's totally it's incongruous to Judaism, but it's also the Jews are required to show gratitude for good. We've been dealt good by the people of the Arab and Muslim country. The world totally doesn't know this narrative, the story. Speak up, keep on doing. We'll do together. God will see we're doing, and we will see with Jala Free Palestine.
Thank you, Rabbi. I think we have to move to our press conference. Oh, sorry. I was instructed to allow. Yeah, 2 more questions, please. Thank you. But could we have it short and simple because we are running out of time? We need to move on to press conference.
Okay, can I? My name is Razwan from Yayasan Aman, Malaysia. Effort to campaign to boycotting some of those products, some of those famous brand name has been on the offensive mood here in Malaysia, causing some adverse effect apparently to some of those outlets being closed. But at the same time, we were given some tips or some advice by many politicians, by many community leaders as well, that continuous boycotting those products may cause some effect as well on our economy, on our chains of.
What is your question, sir? Please.
My question is, especially to Tan Sri, I would like to get some advice. How do you advise us? Are we to continue doing it because the narrative has been saying that it has caused our youth jobless. It has caused some production stop. You know that. How do you see this this counterproductive effort being sorted out?
Thank you.
Well, you have projected the question to me, but I think the proper person to answer would be a professor. In the interim, this much I can say: blind boycott without due respect to opportunities and rights under our laws could be on the subjectively, decisively unwanted. Number one, it will go against the reasoning of having jobs, employment, income for the family. But having said that, the blatant ones, as been pointed out just now, we ought to list them out. And a system of parley or discussion must be had. We don't want to mention names just out into the open at this moment, but we do know, like BlackRock, for example, is totally, blatantly against the fiber of reasonableness within our country. Why not bring it forward? But the other companies, the beverages, the food outlet, that could come into a second category where we should reason it out by way of employment indirectly concerned with the family. We need not put that on the plate first. But the big ones, those that are really out and they are saying it blatantly, I think the government must do something. And beyond that, I think you would like to.
Okay, I will answer directly. If you remember on the diagram on the chart that I explained just now, there was a group called Organic Boycott Targets. McDonald's, KFC, Pizza Hut, Burger King, some of the companies inside there. Why are we calling that? Number one, what is Organic Boycott Targets? These are boycott efforts, which were originated by the people, grassroots supporters, which BDS endorsed. For example, McDonald's. The Malaysians decided to boycott McDonald's when they saw the photos of McDonald's in Israel giving free food to the Israeli soldiers while they are killing Palestinians. So the Malaysians couldn't stop. They say, I'm not going to buy anymore McDonald's because you are complicit. You are providing free food to the Israeli soldiers. And BDS said, all right, we endorse that because this is justified. Now, by the way, we got sued by McDonald's, you know, when we put that logo. McDonald's sued us for 6 million ringgit. Let me explain. Let me share with you what happened during our mediation. We had a discussion. We said to them, they said they are not involved. I said, who are they? McDonald's. What is your name here? What is your name here? What is your restaurant's name here? Is it the same or different? It's the same. What's the logo? Is it the same or different? It's the same logo. So, secondly, I said, if Malaysians are upset at you and you want to tell them that you are not part of it and you condemn genocide by the Israeli, why don't you just issue a statement? Issue a statement to say that we condemn the genocide in Gaza by Israel. They are not willing to do that. Unfortunately, let me share with you, they are not willing to do that. KFC is not in there. It's not in our list. But they got boycotted by Malaysians as well because Malaysians also lost their appetite because they feel that KFC is also complicit. So I said to KFC, I advised them, we didn't campaign against you, but my advice to you is issue a statement to condemn Israeli genocide in Gaza. They also refuse to do that. So if they are refusing to do that, if Malaysians don't want to go to their restaurants, they should be blaming themselves. Don't blame the Malaysian consumers.
Thank you.
The Malaysian consumers have certain values and sentiments. Make sure that your organization's products and services are aligned with the values and sentiments of Malaysian consumers. If you fail to do that, then that's your fault that Malaysians do not want to buy from your shops. As simple as that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. One last question. Salam sejahtera. Nama saya Salbia Ahmad. My question is for Saudara Rais Yatim. I believe there is a Uniting for Peace resolution in the General Assembly. I need your opinion. Is it possible under this resolution to raise a peacekeeping operation? In that case, I want Malaysia to lobby for this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well, Puan Selvia, that is your statement of desire. I think we should support that. And by supporting that, there are perhaps a few leeways that we should follow. One, Wisma Putra must adopt a forward-looking, a positive approach towards this Makaba that is happening in Palestine, bordering with Israel. Number two, I think we should formulate a philosophy of getting on with our job. And today we have got all the NGOs. What say you that the NGOs of today, that conglomerate here, produce a statement on Palestine to the effect that we have discussed today. And that, I think, will pave the way for further and other possibilities. Your view, I think, is productive, and we thank you for that. We'll note it down, and I hope the Secretariat could put it into a future list of immediate action.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have for the plenary session. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. We hope that you leave us here today with more wisdom and understanding for energizing peace and criminalizing war. Free Palestine,
from the river to the sea. Thank you. Before leaving the auditorium, I would like to invite participants of the roundtable session to make your way to the banquet hall across the building. We will begin the roundtable session chaired by Dr. Muhammad Ghazali, Muhammad Noor, shortly after the press conference and group photos. Can we please have the panelists in front of the stage as well for the press conference? Can I please also have the heads of joint hosts, Tan Sri Nur Rahmai, Tuan Haji Zulkifli, and Tuan Haji Kamaruzaman to join the panelists. Finally, can I have Professor Dr. Mizan and Roundtable Chairman Dr. Ghazali please also join the press conference. Thank you all.
ماليزيا على دعمها للشعب الفلسطيني.
بارك الله فيكم، الله يخلف عليكم، وإن شاء الله كل سنة وأنتم سالمين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, officially, My Care Gaza opened a new shelter for the refugees. This is called Friendship Shelter Camp number 2, after we already opened number 1. This camp is sponsored by Ikuti. So from the bottom of the Palestinian Hearts Demakase for Ikuti. This camp number 2 is located in a Nusayrat refugee camp, and also we have around 60 tents inside this camp. As you see around me, we have too many children in this place. This place will support the children for the education and for the psychological programs. As well, we will provide them with food, drink and everything else. We have actually different programs and activities in this place. We will show you, inshallah, these activities in the coming days, and we will update you. Alhamdulillah, we receive different thanks and feedback from those people who stay in this place, and all of them, in one word, they are thanking My Care, Malaysia and Ikuti.
Thank you, My Care. Shukran Ikuti. Shukran Malaysia.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات